My wife yelled. You gave me an STD on Xmas Eve. I smirked, proving that she had been sleeping with my coworker. Now, she's begging for a second chance. Subreddit. I never imagined that I would be the one accused of giving his wife an STD in front of his whole family on Christmas. However, here we are. I had to get this out of my system. This one goes from Merry Christmas to Who the hell did I marry in a flash, so grab a bite to eat. Everyone referred to my marriage to Rachel, a 38-year-old woman, and me, a 40-year-old man, as solid. Met in college, dated for 3 years, and married at age 28. We discussed having children someday, purchased a home in Chandler, and traveled to San Diego every summer. Nothing grandiose or ostentatious, just two individuals creating a life together. Her family loved me, and my family loved her. For 15 years, friends often remarked that we were the steady couple they wanted to be. I had no cause to doubt it, so I never did. I was hers. She was my person. And that was that. The past few months had been strange for us. Nothing in particular that I could pinpoint. Just that instinct that something is wrong. Rachel was a pharmaceutical salesperson who frequently had late meetings and conference calls. Typical enough. However, she had been taking a shower as soon as she got home, putting her phone face down all the time, and being strangely defensive when I asked her simple questions about her day. I put it down to the stress of my job. Quotas, bonuses, and other corporate bullshit are all part of the holiday season. Life was full. Perhaps we were simply going through a stage in which married people tend to cohabit more than connect. At my folks' house in Gilbert on Christmas Eve, the entire family was present. Mark, my brother, and his spouse, aunts, uncles, and my sister Lily with her 3 children. The entire project. When it comes to food and decor, my mom goes all out, making their home a fire hazard and something out of a Hallmark film. I was trying to stay away from my uncle's political tirades while sipping a drink. In the corner, Rachel was once more using her phone. She had been messaging someone all evening, and her body language indicated that she was growing more and more irritated. She put her phone down at 7:30 p.m. and just sat there looking blankly. I was just staring with this unreadable expression. Not crying yet. Lily, my sister, noticed first. She had always preferred Rachel over me, believing her to be the steady, reasonable one. Lily threw her arm around Rachel's shoulders and sat down beside her. You okay, hun? Lily asked in a gentle, worried tone. Rachel gave a headshake. She shook her head without saying anything, and her eyes began to well up. I was discussing work with my brother Mark across the room when I became aware of the change in body language. Rachel sobbed silently into Lily's hands, as she held her. My mom also noticed, and began to approach with that anxious motherly look that made my dad crazy. She never waited for facts before making emotional snap judgments. I felt sick to my stomach as Rachel looked up and directly at me across the room. Slowly, she got to her feet. Lily continued to clutch her arm as they stood together. Mom wanted to know what was wrong. As people became aware that something was going on, the talks in the room began to wane. Rachel inhaled deeply, then again. She had trembling hands. After wiping her eyes, she noticed that everyone was beginning to pay attention. Her voice was soft, but everyone could hear her remark, I need to say something. There was complete silence in the room. I've been trying to figure out how to say this for a week. I didn't want to ruin Christmas. I claim Brian. And Alfan. My mind was trying to figure out what the hell was going on when I said, I didn't want to do this in front of everyone, but I can't keep quiet anymore. I said, Rachel, maybe we should talk privately. No, she interrupted. Your voice is now more powerful. I've been talking to you privately for months, giving you chances, making excuses, convincing myself I was imagining things. Real tears were running down her face as she gazed at me. I've kept my mouth shut about the late nights, the business trips where you'd come back smelling like perfume, the way you'd shower the second you got home like you were washing something off. What on earth was she referring to? I convinced myself that it was stress from work, that you were simply exhausted, and that I was being insecure and suspicious. Broken and bitter. She laughed. I even went to the doctor thinking maybe I was going through something hormonal. Maybe I was depressed and that's why I felt so disconnected from you. My mother raised her hand to her mouth. Lily had a horrified expression on her face as she stared at me. In the background, I could see my dad, his mouth clenched, observing but not yet responding. My mom plunged right into emotional turmoil, but he waited for the whole story, as he always did. It wasn't hormonal, though. With her hands shaking so much that she nearly dropped her phone, Rachel went on. The doctor ran tests, standard tests, when you're having certain symptoms, and the results came back Thursday. She got her phone out of her purse, pulled up something on the screen, and held it up without showing it yet. She exclaimed, "Herpes. I have herpes." Loudly enough for everyone to hear. When I said, "And I've been with exactly one person in 15 years. My husband, the man I trusted," the audience erupted in astonished whispers and gasps. In fact, my mother staggered backward. With an inscrutable countenance, my dad got up from his chair. "Rachel, I don't know what you think," I began. "What I think?" she asked, her voice growing louder. "What I think is that you've been cheating on me. What I think is that you brought home an STD and gave it to me. What I think is that I've been the faithful, devoted wife while you were out doing God knows what with God knows who." I raised my voice and said, "I haven't cheated on you." "Liar." She was shouting loudly. "Now you're a liar. All those work trips to Tucson, all those late nights at job sites, all those weekends you had to work and I stayed home alone. You weren't working, were you? You were with her or them, however many women you've been sleeping with behind my back." Lily had completely shifted to Rachel's side, and was staring at me. My mother was crying, as she always did, focusing on her feelings rather than the facts. I could see my dad thinking and calculating as he watched, but he didn't say anything yet. I didn't want to believe it. So I remained silent. Rachel added, her voice quivering, "I kept making excuses for you because I loved you, because I thought we had something real. I've been home every single night managing our household, being the perfect wife. And this is what I get? A disease I'll have for the rest of my life?" I tried to interrupt. "Listen to me, Rachel. No, I'm done listening to you. I'm done making excuses." Even though she was crying now, she continued to speak and act for the crowd. "I've been protecting you. Protecting your reputation. Not telling anyone what I suspected because I didn't want people to think badly of you. But I can't do it anymore. I can't keep this inside when you're standing there lying to my face." Lily, my sister, came forward. "Oh my God, Rachel. I'm so sorry. I had no idea." She gave me a hateful glare. "How could you do this to her?" "Lily. I didn't." "Don't." Lily said to me. "Don't you dare try to talk your way out of this. She has medical proof. She has test results. What do you have? More lies?" My mother approached Rachel and touched her arm. She stared at me with tears streaming down her cheeks and said, "Sweetie. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say." She was already convinced of my guilt. "Normal. How could you? I raised you better than this." Now I was on the verge of yelling. "Mom, I didn't cheat. I don't know what's going on. But I did not cheat on her." "Then how did she get it?" my mother asked, her voice breaking with anguish. "No logic. You're her husband. If you didn't give it to her, then who did?" My dad finally said. "I don't know. But it wasn't me." He cut through the panic with a cool, collected voice. "Everyone needs to take a breath. This is a serious accusation. And we need facts, not emotions. Thank the Lord for him. Facts." He was wheeled on by Lily. "She just told you the facts. She has test results. She has test results that say she's sick." With caution, my dad stated. "That doesn't necessarily prove how she got sick." Rachel's gaze widened. "Are you saying I'm lying? Are you seriously going to defend him right now?" "I'm saying we need to understand the full situation before we destroy people's lives with accusations." With a harsh tone, Rachel asked, "Destroy his life? What about my life? I'm the one who's been humiliated. I'm the victim here." Then Rachel came over to me. Everyone stiffened. She was standing just in front of me, her body trembling and her face drenched in tears. "How could you?" she muttered to herself. Just for me, then louder for everyone. "How could you do this to us?" Additionally, she gave me a strong slap across the face in order to sell the act, produce the sound, and make the point. The room remained still. No one shifted. Lily instantly jumped in. "You are not allowed to remain here with him. Come remain with me. This monster should not be in your vicinity." My mother, still in tears, nodded. "Sure, accompany Lily. You must be in a secure location." I had to leave. I simply must get out. Rachel reached for her handbag. Lily wrapped Rachel's shoulders with her arm. "Come on, my love. Let's leave this place." Together, they left. In the driveway, I could hear them. While my mother stood there nodding along as if I were the worst person alive, Lily's reassuring voice called me every derogatory term in the book. After they went, there was silence in the room. Everyone is looking at me. The only person who didn't seem persuaded was my dad. He drew me away. Tomorrow is your test day. Obtain evidence either way. Yes, I will. Excellent. Because everyone believes you are guilty at the moment. To combat this, you need facts. That night, I drove home by myself, my head spinning. Without Rachel, the house felt empty. To be honest though, I felt relieved. I needed time to reflect. The entire situation seemed strange, too staged, too well timed, as if she had been preparing it. However, there was also this persistent thought in the back of my mind. 6 months ago, I underwent gallbladder surgery. It was a routine treatment, but they had utilized blood draws, IV needles, and other procedures. Could this be the result of tainted equipment? Although it seemed improbable, hospitals occasionally make mistakes. Perhaps it was a medical error, if Rachel wasn't cheating. Perhaps this was just bad luck and neither of us had done anything wrong. I refrained from going totally nuclear because of that thought. Still, the following morning, I went to a Scottsdale urgent care center. I informed the nurse that I required a complete STD panel. She inquired about my symptoms. I replied, no, I just needed peace of mind. She shot me the sly glance that suggests she's witnessed this precise situation 100 times. Urine sample, swab test, blood draw, and so forth. Results in 3 to 5 business days. According to her, 3 to 5 days. 3 years might as well have passed. However, I was forced to wait. Rachel had sent 5 texts by the time I arrived home. We have to discuss money. For medical costs, I must have access to your account. After what you did, you owe me at least that much. Will you really disregard me? Money is what I need. I gazed at their messages. She was already putting herself in the role of the victim, demanding payment. Before I could receive my test results, I was already attempting to obtain money. She didn't reply for an hour, until I wrote back, shut up. Wait for my test results. Then we'll talk. Are you simply going to abandon me? Let me handle this on my own? It was you who departed. Lily's is where you are staying. Take care of it. My phone rang. Rachel. I left it in voicemail. She kept calling. Things became fascinating at that point. Day 2 of the results wait. An unknown number called my phone. Something forced me to answer when I nearly didn't. Hi there. Is Rachel married to this person? A woman's voice was tremulous, as if she had been crying. Who is this? Laura is my name. Ben is my hubby. He collaborates with your spouse. I felt sick to my stomach. All right. I recently received my test results. I'm infected with herpes, and because my husband has been cheating on me with your wife for the past 5 months, I am positive that he gave it to me. Everything became icy. What? Between them, I discovered text messages, hotel receipts, pictures, and more. We both have herpes as a result of their illicit relationship. I took a firm seat on my couch. You've known for how long? It was only yesterday that I was able to validate my months-long suspicions. Discovered his burner phone concealed in the garage. All of their communications were present. He was with her during every lie he told, including when he claimed to be traveling for conferences or working late. Christ Jesus. You should know. Which is why I'm calling. My husband gave you an STD through your wife. She is dishonest and deceitful. Additionally, I'm taking all that Ben possesses. I spoke carefully, as Rachel accused me of cheating. She slapped me on Christmas Eve in front of my whole family, and said that I was the cause of her illness. Laura let out a gasp of disdain. She did, of course. That's what dishonest people do. Before you discover the truth, flip the script. I just had a test yesterday, and I'm awaiting the findings. For your own sake. I hope you're negative because if you're not, she provided it to you and then attempted to ruin your reputation in order to hide her own. We continued our conversation for 20 more minutes. I received screenshots of everything Laura had discovered. Hotel reservations. Deleted pictures from Ben's phone. Texts between Ben and Rachel. And proof of a 5-month romance that Rachel concealed, while pretending to be the ideal wife. I saved each and every screenshot. I had stopped worrying about tainted surgical needles by the time I hung up. I was simply enraged. In an attempt to control the story, Rachel publicly humiliated me on Christmas Eve, after she was found cheating with her lover. Even though I was waiting for test results, The fact was obvious. Day 3 of the results wait. Rachel arrived at the residence. Through the glass, I saw her pull into the driveway. Screw it. Even though it's thought of as not answering the door. We might as well finish this. She appeared indignant and righteous as she entered. We have to discuss money. You're treating me as if I don't exist. Despite the fact that I have mounting medical expenditures. You are also accountable for this. You're acting as like none of this matters, despite the fact that the expense of the drug is outrageous. Rachel. Have a seat. Don't give me instructions. Until you deposit money into my account, I won't sit down. It's your responsibility that I'm handling this alone, and the hospital calls me every day. I told you to sit down. Like a dagger, my voice sliced through her sense of entitlement. The room fell silent. She literally stopped in the middle of my statement because of something in my tone, cold, controlled, and definitive. For a moment, her mouth fell open. Then, seeming much less confident, she cautiously lowered herself onto the couch. The stillness lingered for a moment after I took out my phone and opened the folder containing Laura's screenshots. I am aware of Ben. Her face turned pale. What? Ben, your company's regional manager. For the past 5 months, you have been a fair partner. The man who truly infected you with herpes. Do you recognize this? I have no idea what you're discussing. His wife sent me everything and gave me a call. Hotel receipts, pictures, and texts. I am aware that you have been having sex with him. I am aware that he infected you. I am aware that you blamed me on Christmas Eve in order to hide your own shortcomings. Rachel's mouth moved back and forth. Nothing was said. So, this is how it's going to go, I said. My voice extremely calm. Too calm. My test results are still pending. But the truth is already known to me. You were unfaithful. Your affair partner gave you an STD. Then you attempted to ruin my reputation in order to preserve yours, she said. I leaned over and said, You can't? Can't what? Sue you? Embarrass you? Send those screenshots to your mom, your workplace, your whole family. Try me. Whether my results come back positive or negative, I'm going to mess your life up so completely you'll wish you'd never met me. She began to weep. This time, it's not the performance trash from Christmas Eve, but actual tears. It was an error. It simply occurred. I had no intention of doing any of this. You mean it simply happened? By chance, you ended up dating him several times over the course of several months. What an absurd coincidence. We can resolve this, please. Leave. No. Pay attention to me. Leave. This is also my home. Desperate, her voice broke and became strident. I can't be dismissed as if I don't exist. Without a word, I got up, went directly to the bedroom, and began tearing her clothes from the closet, causing the hangers to fall on the ground. I began packing everything into rubbish bags that I had taken from behind the sink. Everything: dresses, shoes, her ridiculous ornamental pillows. She screamed as she followed me. This is not something you can do. You can't simply dismiss me. I won't throw you out. I took one bag and tied it off. I'm clearing my property of rubbish. There's a distinction. Give it up. Quit. She attempted to take one of my bags. She staggered when I pulled it back. If you touch my belongings once more, I'll contact the police for assault. Proceed. Give me a try. Anger twisted her face. You're crazy. You're insane. Yes. And I suppose we're equal, because you tried to blame me for your own problems, and are a cheater. I pushed by her, went to the front door with 3 bags, and flung them onto the porch. They returned for more after landing with a nice thud. She appeared to be from a horror film as she stood in the bedroom doorway, trembling and with mascara streaming down her cheeks. She said, You're really doing this? I took her makeup bag from the bathroom counter and asked, You're really just now figuring that out? Jesus, it's no surprise that Ben lost it. Obviously, you're not good at critical thinking. I'll screw you. I have already done so. The biggest error of my life. I tossed the bag of makeup on the floor. Do you want anything else? You may send a lawyer. Oh, hold on. You're not wealthy enough to hire a lawyer, are you? You'll have to ask Ben, I suppose. Shuddering with anger and sadness, she stood in the doorway. With a poisonous tone, she spat. I hope you have it, too. I hope the results of the test show that you are positive. You understand how it feels, then, so you can relate to what I'm experiencing. After giving her a long look and letting the words linger, I grinned, chilly and vacant. It's there. The true you. It took a long enough time. I went to the door, picked up the final bag, and held it open. Out. I despise you. Excellent. There are now two of us. Her shoulders heaved with tears as she left. I shut the door after her. I didn't slam it. Simply shut it. I locked it. Deadbolt chain. She repeatedly pounded on it with great force. Let the door open. Crack it open. I went to the kitchen, picked up a soda, opened it, and took a long sip. The hammering went on. 5 minutes until 10. Her voice was broken, her fists thumping. We can resolve this, please. Please. Then there was quiet. Her car started, and I heard the tires screech as it pulled out of the driveway. I had a meeting with my lawyer the following day. Getting a prenuptial agreement before marrying Rachel was the best choice I've ever made. At the moment, she had resisted it. Said that indicated I didn't have faith in her. I didn't think we were in love, and was preparing for failure rather than achievement. I had informed her that it was only prudent business to safeguard the contributions that each of us made to the marriage. Eventually, she had signed it, most likely hoping that after a few years of blissful marriage, she would persuade me to tear it up. I was going to be saved by that prenuptial agreement. I presented everything to my lawyer. Laura was informed of the affair, the sexually transmitted disease, and the public humiliation by her family members, who had witnessed the Christmas Eve accusation, Laura's screenshots, and phone records I had obtained from our carrier. My attorney grinned. This is a no-brainer. She leaves with essentially nothing but what she brought in, because to the prenuptial agreement, adultery, defamation, and false charges, nothing was brought in by her. That's right. I said. I'm still awaiting my test results. I'll be back in a day or two. It has no bearing on the divorce. If you test positive, you can file a civil suit for damages on top of the affair, which is sufficient in and of itself. That afternoon, we submitted our divorce paperwork. Kept things straightforward. Adultery, irreconcilable disputes, and wealth division in accordance with a prenuptial agreement. I kept the savings, the house, and the cars. In addition to her personal stuff, Rachel received her own retirement account, which included roughly $10,000, served her at Lily's home. Rachel had a total meltdown when she read the terms, based on Lily's subsequent texts in which she called me every derogatory name in the book. Unfortunately, 6 days after Christmas Eve, with urgent care closed for the holiday and everything moving slowly, the test results were received 4 days later. Not at all. Every exam was flawless overall. I felt waves of relief wash over me as I sat in the clinic parking lot and stared at the paperwork. It wasn't with me. I wasn't infected by her. At least she hadn't told anyone about what she'd been doing with Ben before I did. I snapped a picture of the outcome. I forwarded it to Laura. She responded to the text right away. Well done. Destroy her now. I then forwarded the findings to my attorney. She answered in a matter of minutes. Excellent. Everything is strengthened by this. When she was at fault, she attempted to ruin you. She will be despised by the judge. Rachel quickly found her own attorney. There was a man who focused on women's rights, which reportedly entailed opposing prenuptial agreements and sabotaging husbands. He filed a countermotion right once, claiming that the prenuptial agreement was signed under duress, and that she should receive medical expense coverage, spousal support, and a 50-over-50 asset split. When my attorney saw it, she chuckled. They're making progress. 2 months before to the wedding, independent legal counsel signed the prenuptial agreement. That will not be dismissed by a judge. She will be fortunate to retain the retirement savings in light of her infidelity and the STD condition. For Rachel, discovery was cruel. Every hotel receipt, every text exchange with Ben, and every lie she had told about staying late at work or attending conferences were all revealed. Her attorney attempted to have some evidence suppressed on the grounds that it had been fraudulently obtained. However, it was fair game because it resulted from Ben's wife's lawful discovery during her own divorce. The scene from Christmas Eve became the main focus of my argument. According to my attorney, it demonstrated Rachel's manipulative tendencies and her readiness to damage my image in order to protect herself. She provided testimonies from relatives who had seen the slap and accusation. Rachel's attorney attempted to portray me as spiteful and domineering. But you cannot dispute test results, witness testimony, documentation, or phone logs. The judge did not share Rachel's viewpoint. I had revealed everything to my family in the interim. Sent group SMS. Containing every piece of proof. The affair is revealed via phone records. Screenshots of Ben and Rachel's texts. Her test results were positive. But mine were clean. The entire tale of her attempt to discredit me in public in order to hide her own infidelity. My mother called in tears. "I'm so sorry. I ought to have trusted you. I ought to have waited for the information." "Yes. You ought to have." I felt hesitant to extend forgiveness. Because Rachel sobbed, "You instantly found me guilty. Instant judgment. No questioning. No benefit of the doubt. I am aware. I apologize. Please. Mom. I simply need space." Next to call was Lily. We believed her. "You can't really blame us for that. She seems really sincere. You believed her when she was lying. Referred to me as a monster. Claimed that I was untrustworthy. Without even requesting my version. I took her side. I am your innocent brother. And she is a lady in pain. But you didn't give a damn about that, did you? That is unfair. Lily. Tell me something. How recently have you truly waited for information before drawing conclusions?" She ended our conversation. My father gave me a call later that evening. "Are you doing all right?" "I am as good as I can be. I'm cutting Lily and Mom off. For now, at least. People who make snap judgments without sufficient information are difficult for me to deal with." "I get it," he muttered. "For what it's worth, I trusted you right away. My son is someone I know. Regards. Dad." He fell silent for a moment. I heard him let out a breath. He said, "I have to tell you something." It was final, but not dramatic. "I've been speaking with an attorney for some time. It was just locked in on Christmas Eve." My mind stopped working. "What's locked in?" "Your mother and I are divorcing." I didn't intend to sit down. "Are you serious?" "Extremely serious. I've spent the majority of my life watching her treat feelings like facts," he remarked. "I could put up with it when it was about neighbors, coworkers, or random family drama. But when she did it to you in front of everyone with no proof, that was it for me." He didn't sound angry. "If she feels something, then it's automatically true in her eyes. And anyone who disagrees is the enemy." "Just finished," I said. Even though I knew what he was going to say, "She apologized." He said, "She apologized for how it made you feel, not for being wrong. Since Rachel was crying and she was upset, she still believes she was justified." I was emotional and thought, that's the problem. Anyone may be accused of anything. I've tried to talk to her about this for years. Counseling, conversations, compromises. Nothing sticks. "I'm 62, he said after pausing. We spoke for another hour. He had been preparing this for some time. Apparently, Christmas Eve just confirmed what he already knew. My mom made everything about emotions. And refused to let facts interfere with her feelings. I'm not wasting whatever time I have left getting dragged into mob scenes every time she decides her feelings matter more than reality." Ben's life fell apart first, and Laura's divorce was a complete disaster. She had proof of the affair, the sexually transmitted disease, the lying, and the concealed burner phone. And she pursued full custody of the children, who were 13 and 15 years old at the time and old enough to realize their father had cheated on them and given their mother an STD. Laura was given primary custody, and Ben was given supervised visitation only if the children agreed, which they never did. The children both replied no when the judge asked if they wanted to see their father, stating that they didn't want to be around someone who would deceive them and treat their mother in such a manner. Ben ended up working middle management for half his previous salary, after being fired from the pharmaceutical company for ethics violations and fraudulent expense reports. While Rachel's fall was nearly as spectacular, the company investigation revealed that she and Ben had been billing personal expenses as business costs. Laura received the house, the cars, child support, and spousal support. They offered her resignation with a 3-month severance in exchange for not suing them, and she accepted because fighting would have required her to confess to fraud. Eventually, she found a new job in medical device sales with a 30% pay cut. They had shared hotel rooms, dinners with no clients present, and conference travel they had both attended without a valid reason. My divorce was finalized in April, and the judge enforced the prenup exactly as written. Rachel received her personal belongings and her retirement account, but nothing else. No house, no spousal support, no shared assets. She moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Tempe, and struggled to pay the rent and pay for her medical expenses on her reduced income. Your client had a long-term extramarital affair, got an STD from her affair partner, and then publicly accused your client of cheating to cover her own actions. She had tried every tactic her lawyer could think of. including claiming the prenuptial agreement was unfair, that I was wealthy and she should be supported, and that the STD situation was private medical information that shouldn't matter. The judge shut it all down. As the judge read the final orders, Rachel sobbed, but I felt nothing. In the meantime, my mom's divorce from my dad was proceeding, and she did everything she could to stop it, begging, guilt trips, and acting as though his decision was some random midlife meltdown, but he refused to change. The prenuptial agreement is legitimate, and will be enforced exactly as written, he informed her. I've spent 35 years managing your emotions. During one mediation session, that I later learned about. I'm done. When you publicly condemned our son without providing any evidence, that told me exactly who you are. I'm not going to put up with another 20 years of that. The divorce was simple. There were no children to fight over. The assets were divided equally. And the only real conflict was over the house. Mom wanted to stay in it. Dad wanted to sell, and the judge sided with Dad. Dad bought a modern, minimalist, quiet condo in Scottsdale. And he seemed happier than I had seen him in years. Mom couldn't afford it on her own, so she ended up moving in with Lily. Two emotional, reactive people living together. I gave it 6 months before they turned on each other. Rachel posted on Facebook about toxic ex-husbands and victim-blaming culture in an attempt to win over mutual friends. Some people bought it, but most didn't, especially after I sent some important people the real evidence. She lost most of her social circle, and the people who remained were the ones who always believed women regardless of the facts. They could have her. 2 years after the divorce, on New Year's Eve, Dad was watching a game at my house when the doorbell rang at 8. Are you expecting someone? Dad inquired. Nope. I opened the door and saw Rachel, who looked like she had lost 25 pounds. Her hair was pulled back in a greasy ponytail, and she had dark circles under her eyes that were no longer concealable by cosmetics. It was obvious that the herpes medication was taking its toll on her. Hey, she murmured in a trembling voice. May I enter? No. Just for a moment, please. Dad came up behind me and said, I need to talk to you. Who is it? Rachel knew precisely what Dad thought of her, and her face went white at the sight of him. I remained at the doorway and said, It's Rachel. She was just leaving. Wait. She blurted out. I'm pleading with you. Please listen to me. We stepped outside after 5 minutes on the porch, and Dad stood against the doorframe, arms crossed, observing her like a bug under glass. Her use of the word begging caused me to halt, not out of sympathy but more out of morbid interest. Instead of the manipulative tears from Christmas Eve 1.5 years ago, Rachel started crying right away. It was real ugly crying. Complete with snot and all. She acknowledged that she had made a mistake. Everything is gone from me. I've lost my career. I've lost my residence. I live in my cousin's extra bedroom in Tempe. I can hardly afford my prescription drugs. My credit has been ruined. I have nothing. All right. All right. You only have that to say? Rachel, what do you want me to say? You made decisions. These are the repercussions. I was afraid. I went into a panic. I was at a loss for what to do. You had the option to be honest. You would have prevented a great deal of trouble for everyone. I know, she said, using her sleeve to wipe her face. I am aware. I should have, but there's nothing I can do about it now. I am only able to. Please give me another chance. I couldn't help but laugh. Another chance at what? At us. At our partnership. Before everything fell apart. We got along well. We might be okay once more. No, I've evolved. I'm receiving therapy. I'm improving myself. I finally realize what went wrong. That's fantastic, sincerely. But it's unrelated to me. She grabbed my arm and said, Please. I yanked away. I have no one. Mom refuses to speak to me. I can't get Lily to answer my phone. I no longer have any pals. Everyone is aware of what I did. I'm all by myself. Not my problem. How come you're so chilly? Dad snorted behind me and said, Practice. Rachel gave him a look before turning back to face me. I cherished you. I still adore you. We were together for 15 years. It must be worth something. It was worth something. The past tense. Then, when you made the teenage decision to have sex with Ben, you tossed everything away. She wrinkled her face. I am unable to retract that. If I could, I would, but I'm unable to. I'm limited to pleading for pardon. Request another opportunity. I need your assistance to get back up on my feet. There it is. What? The true purpose of your presence. You must have money. I need assistance. Is that really incorrect? We were wed. Together, we created a life. That requires you too, doesn't it? No. I have no obligations because of that. We're no longer together. You are by yourself. I'm ill. I'm having trouble. Trying to figure out how to survive is driving me insane. And since it doesn't matter to me, you're simply standing there pretending as though it doesn't. You're a stranger who must live with the consequences of your poor decisions. The same as everyone else. She had a complete collapse at that point, falling to her knees on my doorstep and crying into her hands. The kind of sobbing that makes you turn your head away because it's so pitiful. Please, she sputtered between sobs. Please bring me back. I'll go to any lengths. I'll sign any prenuptial agreement you desire. Any therapy you desire, I'll attend. I'll have 3 jobs. I simply can no longer handle this alone. I am unable to. Rachel, get up. She said. I'm begging you. Get up. Black streaks of mascara ran down her face as she gazed up at me. Well, that's it. Will you simply let me suffer? When you made the decisions that led you here, you allowed yourself to suffer. I simply refuse to fix it for you. I hope you're happy. I am. Actually. She looked at me as if I had shot her. Then turned and went to her car. A beat-up Honda that seemed to barely run. She sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before starting it, presumably crying even more, but I didn't care enough to look. When she finally drove away, Dad and I walked back inside, and he got 2 sodas out of the refrigerator and gave one to me. Well, he remarked, taking the tab. That was entertaining. Cold, Dad. You know what makes some folks crazy? After destroying their entire life, they will come to you as if you were the complaint department. He drank for a long time. Yes, ma'am. I see that you lit the fire, and that you want to talk to a management about the damage caused by the smoke. I laughed and choked on my soda. Can't make this up, he remarked, shaking his head. Your mother did the same thing. Blew up a 30-year marriage, and then pretended to be surprised that I was no longer able to solve her problems. You told her what? You ought to have told Rachel the same thing. When you took the decision to handle your emergency, it ceased to be my problem. In order to be off the clock, he raised his can. I gave him a clink. Amen to that. Rachel made her own decisions, lied, cheated, and attempted to ruin me after the truth was revealed. She lost everything as a result, and now she wants me to make amends. Hard pass. We are really close to reaching 80,000 subscribers on this channel, guys. If you haven't already, please think about becoming a subscriber. It will help us reach that milestone. Thank you for helping us realize this dream. My wife yelled. You gave me an STD. On Christmas Eve. I smirked, proving that she had been sleeping with my coworker. Now, she's begging for a second chance, my wife said. At Christmas dinner. He isn't your son. I'm taking half. She didn't know I'd secretly gather evidence for court. Now, she pays for her fraud. Surprise. Jackson isn't your son, and I'm taking half. That was the very first thing my wife, Sophia, said, with no warning, no hint, nothing. She just dropped it right there at her parents' Christmas dinner table like it was nothing. The entire room fell silent. Laughter died instantly, and even the kids stopped talking. She slid a DNA envelope toward me with a smug little smile, waiting for me to break in front of everyone. I opened it. 0.1%. 0%. But instead of falling apart, I went cold. Steady. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, check your email. And you should hit follow. Because what she found in that email shattered her entire plan. 8 months before that Christmas dinner, my phone rang in the middle of a job. It was Jackson's preschool, and the teacher sounded calm, but too calm. She said he had had some kind of allergic reaction, hives, swelling, nothing life-threatening, but they wanted him checked out. I dropped everything and drove there. When I walked into the pediatric clinic, Jackson was sitting on the exam table, little legs bouncing, trying so hard to be brave, and he grabbed my hand when the nurse came in with the needle, jaw clenched like a tiny soldier. That's the part of being a dad that no one writes on Hallmark cards. Just standing there letting your kid squeeze your hand while you pretend you're not scared, too. They drew the blood. The doctor listened to his chest. She did all her checks. She said it was probably just allergy stuff. They'd run a full panel and call me back to discuss the results in person. In person. Those 2 words stuck. On the way home, I took Jackson for ice cream, as promised. A few days later, they called, and the nurse asked if I could come in alone, to go over Jackson's labs. Not over the phone, not because he's fine, but alone. When I sat in that chair, I was expecting a medical problem, something we'd fix with medicine or routines. I had no idea the problem was in my marriage, but in his body. When the doctor walked in with a soft smile and a folder, he said, "Good news. Jackson is healthy." For a brief moment, my shoulders dropped. I felt the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Then she flipped a page. "His blood type is B+. Yours is O+. Sophia's is A+. Genetically, that combination shouldn't produce B+. Silence. Not loud, not dramatic, just a cold, sinking silence. I nodded as if I understood, but my brain was buzzing. I walked out telling myself the simplest lie. It's a mistake, a paperwork error. But as I sat in my truck, the lie didn't land as well as it used to. A small, unpleasant voice murmured, "What if it isn't?" I didn't drive home. Instead, I drove away from the street I'd driven 1,000 times, and into a small medical plaza I'd never noticed before. Discrete DNA testing, a sign so ordinary until it wasn't. Inside, everything felt too calm. The woman at the desk slid me a clipboard like it was just another Tuesday. Name, birth date, reason for test. I stared at that last line for longer than I should have. Signing my name felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. I paid extra for rush processing. 96 hours. She said. Just words to her. A lifetime to me. Those 3 days were both slow and fast. Outside, I was a father, reading dinosaur books, giving baths, and pretending everything was normal. Inside, I was sinking. Every time Jackson hugged me. Every night. "Daddy." Something in my chest twisted. Sophia slept beside me as if everything was fine. And I lay awake, living 2 lives in the same bed. On the third night, around 3:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. The room was dark and heavy. Sophia breathing steadily beside me. Nothing felt real. I slipped into the bathroom and closed the door, not even turning on the light. The glow of the phone was enough. "Your results are ready." My thumb hovered for a heartbeat before I opened it. 0%. There was no build-up. No dramatic wording. Just numbers that tore the floor out from under me. I read it once, twice, and 3 times, looking for a footnote, a typo, a miracle. But there was none. I sat on the cold tile, and felt everything inside me go quiet. Not breaking or exploding, just shutting off. In the darkness, with Sophia sleeping 10 feet away, I understood that I had 2 options. Lose control and lose everything. Or stay silent and plan. I had no clue how much planning I'd end up doing. I got up from the bathroom floor and went back to bed. Sophia was still asleep, her back turned as if nothing was wrong. I lay there staring at the ceiling and my brain started rewinding the last 7, 8 years like a bad movie. I remembered when Jackson was born, and the nurse casually mentioned genetic testing. Sophia brushed it off immediately, saying, "No need. It's a hassle. He's clearly yours." I was tired, happy, and in love. I let it go. I remembered how she always pushed me to work more. "You're the provider, Daniel. This is what a man does." At the time, it sounded like respect. Now, it sounded like strategy. I remembered her insisting on separate accounts for safety, which I thought was independence. Now, I heard, "I'm keeping my exit door open." All these little moments I'd filed under her personality started snapping into place like puzzle pieces. Lying there in the dark with my wife's lies inches from my face, one thought hit me hard and ugly. Maybe I was never a husband to her. Maybe I was just a walking wallet with a ring. But I didn't know yet, and the truth was about to cost me far more than I imagined. I nearly flipped the light on, shook her awake, threw the phone at her, and screamed every question, clawing at my throat. How long? Who's the father? Was any of this real, or was I just a paycheck with legs to you? My chest was on fire, fists clenched, heart pounding loudly enough to wake the whole block, and then Jackson's face appeared in my head. He ran to the door, yelling, "Daddy!" He fell asleep on my shoulder in front of the TV, and I realized something brutal. If I lost control right now, if I turned this into a screaming match, she'd own that story. She'd depict me as unstable, dangerous, whatever she needed, and I'd lose more than just my money. I'd lose my child. So, I sat back down on that cold bathroom tile, phone still in my hand, and made a decision that changed everything. I wasn't going to be her victim. I wasn't going to be her fool. I don't get mad, I get even. If she'd been playing the long game with me, she had no idea what I could do when I started playing it back. And the first move I made would turn her greatest fear into my greatest weapon. The morning after that 3:30 a.m. email, I didn't go to work. I told Sophia I had to check on a client's roof, kissed Jackson on the head, and hopped in my vehicle, driving downtown to an office I'd found the night before. Michael Cooper. Family and asset protection. He looked like the kind of man who'd seen every ugly version of Till Death Do Us Part. No small talk, just a firm shake. And tell me what's going on, Daniel. So I did. The blood types, the DNA test, the money, the way Sophia had been nudging me into longer hours, bigger deals, more separation in our finances. Michael listened, took notes, and then hit me with the part that made my stomach drop. Biology doesn't remove 5 years of legal paternity, he replied. As far as the court is concerned, you are Jackson's father. Period. I felt sick. So, I'm just screwed. He shook his head. Not if we're smarter than her. We can use her falsehoods against her, but only if you remain calm and begin documenting everything. There is no drama or controversy, only evidence. If you walk in angry, I will lose. She arrives prepared. I was driving home from Michael's office when it hit me. Nothing in my home could be different. Not yet. Sophia was on her phone in the kitchen as I stepped through the door. She glanced up and inquired. How is the client? As if we were in a regular marriage. I smiled and discussed shingles and estimates. She purchased it. Why shouldn't she? For years, I'd been exactly who she imagined I was. That night is when the second life begins. I retained every receipt with Jackson's name on it. Doctor's appointments, preschool fees, clothing, and meals. I entered our joint accounts on my laptop and silently downloaded statements month after month. I backed up emails, preserved photos, and made copies of anything that demonstrated I was present, whether I was paying, parenting, or turning up. Anytime she pushed me to take on additional jobs or seal that huge solar contract, I nodded, claiming to be the same dependable provider. Inside my thoughts, things were different. You've no idea what I know. You have no idea what I am building. My heart was pounding like a robber when I discreetly screenshotted a text in which she discussed her stake of my company. Actually, I was denying her of the easy departure she believed she had. It finally clicked one night at the kitchen table. I was going over numbers for the roofing and solar jobs, simply reviewing bills, when Sophia sat across from me with a glass of wine, and that casual but not really expression. So, how is the business doing? You and Ryan are killing it, right? She didn't ask like a wife encouraging her spouse. She inquired, as if she were pricing a home prior to the divorce. She sought income, profit, and predicted expansion. She urged me to achieve an accurate appraisal. Investors would be thrilled, he said. They said we needed to know what we were sitting on. Then she moved a folder over. The company now has new structural papers. It's only for tax optimization. Daniel, you should sign before the end of the year. Before I probably had this time, I said, I'll let Michael look at it. Her eyes flared for a single second. Annoyance, perhaps panic. The smile quickly returned. If anything happened, she said carelessly, I'd receive my fair part, right? In that point, it stopped being a marriage in my mind. She thought she had already closed the transaction. What she didn't realize was that every paper she provided me was quietly working against her. A few weeks later, my phone rang at 11 p.m. Sophia was in the shower. The name on the screen caused my stomach to tighten. Emily. Her younger sister. Hello, Daniel. Her voice was already breaking. I strolled outside onto the back porch. What is wrong? I cannot say this over the phone. Can we please meet? We ended up in a drive-through coffee shop, sitting in our own cars, windows cracked, the Texas night air thick and calm. She stepped into my passenger seat, her eyes blazing and hands trembling. I was watching Jackson the other day, she added, and Sophia put down her phone. It lit up. I was not spying, I swear. But once I saw Ryan's name, I couldn't unsee it. She pulled out her phone, her thumb lingering as if she didn't want to make it official. You deserve to know, she muttered. She then replied, I can't watch her do this to you. The sentence that took whatever remained of my previous life and completed the task. Daniel. Jackson isn't your biological son. Ryan is. If this is accurate, Sophia's defection was not accidental. It was a blueprint, and I needed to view the entire map. Emily unlocked her phone with shaky hands, and began scrolling. Here, she murmured, turning the screen toward me. It was Sophia and Ryan. Not flirtatious, romantic, chilly, or transactional. Sophia calls me a walking pocketbook and a meal ticket. I've played him so brilliantly, she said in one thread. He has no idea. In another, she discussed getting pregnant with Jackson as if she were buying stock. Honestly, she texted Ryan. Having his name on the birth certificate was the smartest financial move I've ever made. There was a timeline laid out in black and white. Wait for the company to reach a certain revenue level. File for divorce. Use Jackson as leverage for maximum child support. Move in with Ryan, and live comfortably on my money. Then I noticed the one that took my breath away. By next January, I'll have enough money to last my entire life. Reading those sentences felt like getting punched repeatedly. But my face remained calm. I kept asking Emily for dates, context, and anything that would stand up in court. Something inside of me eventually cracked. This was not a broken marriage. It was a lengthy con. And to beat someone who was playing the long game, I had to play one that was even longer. We sat in the car, the air thick and stale. Emily, I spoke quietly. Would you be willing to back this up in court? On record? She stared straight ahead for a long time, her jaw tightened. I could sense battle in her eyes. Sophia wasn't simply my wife. She was her older sister, the one she grew up with and was meant to protect. Emily started crying. Sophia is my sister, she mumbled. But what she's doing to you and Jackson is just terrible. She wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. I'll keep everything, she responded, including screenshots and dates. If she mentions it again, I'll write it down. If this goes to court, she gulped hard. I'll testify, even if it's against my own sister. On the way home, I called Michael. We're no longer alone, I told him. Sophia's sister is with us. He didn't sound astonished, just calm. Good, he said. Then we'll be patient. She still thinks you're in the dark, Daniel. And that's our biggest weapon. After that night in the car with Emily, my life became a ledger. With every day having 2 layers. On the surface, I was the same old Daniel, running jobs, taking calls, coming home tired, kissing my child goodnight, but underneath, I was counting everything. Who dropped Jackson off? Who picked him up? Who paid for what? What Sophia said, and when she said it. If she whined about abandoning her profession, I wrote it down. If she boasted to her mother about how well the business was going, Emily recorded it on her phone. Every time Ryan came by to talk business while Jackson napped on the couch, I made a note of the date, time, and length of his stay. I didn't accuse or push, I just watched. Michael began compiling a timeline. An affair before Jackson was born. Pregnancy as a strategy, financial moves, and the plan to cash out once the numbers looked right. One afternoon in his office, staring at the stack of emails, screenshots, and notes, he leaned back and murmured almost to himself. Daniel, we're not just building a divorce case. We're developing a fraud case. For the first time, I recognized my marriage wasn't falling apart. It had been built this way. However, even the most flawless strategy has a weakness, and I had just discovered hers. In the midst of all that cold, calculated planning, there was one thing that kept me human. Jackson. Every evening as I came into the driveway, he'd sprint out the front door, socks sliding on the hardwood, yelling, "Daddy!" like I was the best part of his entire day. He'd slam into my legs, wrap his arms around me, and nothing else mattered. Not DNA percentages, not court maneuvers, just my kid and the way he fit against my chest. I recall the first time he said, "Dad." He was barely speaking, standing in his cot in that droopy little onesie, reaching out for me. I swear I felt wealthier than any man alive. Lying awake at night, watching him sleep on the baby monitor, I kept thinking, blood or not, I'm his father. I'm the one who shows up. Sophia could call him an asset in her texts all day long. To her, he was a number in a plan. To me, he was the reason I couldn't afford to lose my mind or my case. She may have used him as leverage, I told myself. But I'll fight like hell to make sure he never feels like a bargaining chip. A few weeks later, Emily sent more screenshots. This time, it wasn't just cold planning. It was Sophia talking about me. He's too easy to manipulate. She texted Ryan. He wants to feel like a provider. That's why this works. Another message. He's a provider, not a partner. He'll never see it coming. They were literally planning my destruction. talking about the perfect time to drop the DNA bomb after the holidays. Before the tax year closed. When the business numbers low. I gave everything to Michael, who examined everything, and said, "She's not just leaving you, Daniel. She's already met with her own attorney." The notes in the messages were explicit, and they asked about the maximum child support based on predicted income. "She's attempting to take you to the cleaners." The worst line was one I'll never forget. By November, the business was booming, with roofing jobs, solar installations, insurance work after storms, and money finally coming in the way Ryan and I had hoped for when we started. "Jackson is my insurance policy, and once I finish, I'll be able to live off his money for the rest of my life." The numbers on the spreadsheet looked a lot like the milestones Sophia had mentioned in those texts. And the closer we got to Christmas, the sweeter she got, cooking my favorite dinners, random kisses on the cheek, asking about my day like we were newlyweds again. If I hadn't seen those messages, I might have thought we'd turned a corner. Instead, it seemed like seeing someone set a stage that you knew was about to blow. Michael and I met again. I showed him the latest, and he leaned back and said, "This is the calm before the storm. Allow her to make the first move. We'll be ready." Each passing day felt like we were getting closer to the edge of a volcano. Emily told me Sophia had been humming around the kitchen one night, saying under her breath, "January is going to change everything." She had no idea how right she was, just not in the way she thought. That Christmas wasn't the moment she won. It was the moment everything she had built began to crumble. Christmas in our neighborhood looked like a postcard. We drove over to Sophia's parents' house, the big red brick two-story she grew up in. And it was chaos in the cozy way. With music playing, her mom juggling casseroles, and her father yelling at the TV about a football game. Sophia was glowing too much. Michael's words echoed in my mind as she wrapped her arm around my shoulders and introduced me to distant cousins as if I were her prize. No one knew I had a hotel room booked 10 minutes away and a packed bag in the back of my truck, just in case tonight went as planned. If she announces divorce in front of witnesses, that's gold. I kissed Jackson on the top of his head. "Be good for Grandpa and Grandma, buddy." Later, in their bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, tonight, I stopped being the guy who never saw it coming. And I had no idea that within hours, every mask in that house would fall. When we sat down for dinner, the house smelled like turkey, gravy, and cinnamon. Her father was pouring bourbon and telling the same stories he tells every year. Her mother was bragging about her stuffing recipe, and children were laughing at the end of the table, faces sticky with frosting. Sophia sat beside me, hand resting on my shoulder, telling her family how well the business was doing. "Daniel and Ryan are killing it this year," she said, like she was proud of me. Like she wasn't planning to cash out. I chewed, nodded, answered questions about storms, roofs, and solar panels, all while counting my own heartbeat. Is it tonight, or is she waiting until January? Her younger brother was arguing with his wife about something stupid. When the small talk died down and the dessert plates began to hit the table, Sophia reached into her purse. Her eyes were excited, hungry, and dark, as if they were saying one thing: "It's showtime." Sophia slid the envelope toward me. "Open it," she said, her voice bright. "This is your real Christmas present." My fingers knew before my brain caught up. The paper, the weight of it. I opened the flap to see the lab logo. DNA. My heart slowed down, not up, and the room became strangely silent. I could feel her father looking, and her mother leaning in, hoping for a good surprise. Sophia leaned back, savoring the anticipation, and then she dropped it. "Surprise," she said clearly. "Jackson isn't your kid, and I'm taking half." You could have heard a fork hit the floor. Everybody stared at me, waiting for the explosion. They had no idea I'd already walked through this fire 8 months ago. Sophia kept going, and she started listing my supposed sins like she was reading from a script. I was a workaholic. I could feel her mother's eyes on me, wet and confused, her father's jaw clenched, torn between anger and shame, and her brother's argument came to a halt in the middle of a sentence. Every line was intended to cut deeper, to make me look like the bad guy in front of her parents. Even the kids went quiet for no apparent reason. They were all waiting for the same thing. For me to explode, yell, beg, or shatter. But I didn't. I looked down at the DNA results one more time before gently placing the paper on the table like it was just another bill. 8 months of planning sat beneath my calm. I met Sophia's eyes. The smugness there made what I said next seem even better. "Sophia," I murmured gently. Check your email. The whole room held its breath, and she appeared afraid for the first time that night. That calmness was the first crack in her entire scheme. Sophia slowly picked up her phone, expecting to see some pathetic, angry paragraph from me. Maybe threats. Maybe begging. But instead she opened her inbox and went perfectly still. I watched her thumb hover, then tapped the email from Michael's office. Subject line: Draft Harrison v. Harrison petition and exhibits. Her eyes started moving fast. First page: divorce petition, grounds, fraud, infidelity, financial misconduct. She looked through the chronology, dates of her meetings with Ryan, money transfers, the DNA test I'd done months before, screenshots of her texts calling me a walking wallet, and transcripts of calls Emily had recorded. Her mother muttered, "Sophia, what's that?" Her dad leaned over, face draining. Sophia's hand shook. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I stood up, pushed my chair back, and finally broke the silence. "Everything you just told your family," I said. "I've known for 8 months. Sophia, you weren't 10 steps ahead of me." I kept her stare. I was 20. After that, there was nothing else to say. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. Sophia was still glued to her phone, scrolling through the wreckage of her own plan. Her mom was crying openly now, and her father couldn't look at me for more than a second. "Daniel, wait," someone said. I don't even know who. I didn't. I walked out of that warm, noisy house, into the cold night air, and the sound of Christmas music, clinking dishes, and children's voices faded behind me like someone turning down a radio. For the first time in years, I got into my truck, and didn't have to pretend I didn't know what my life was really about. 10 minutes later, I was at the hotel I'd booked days before. Check-in, key card, generic hallway. I dropped my bag on the floor of that quiet room and just stood there. Then I pulled out my phone and called Michael. "She made her move," I said. "Your turn." He didn't hesitate. "All right, we file tonight." "Do it," I answered. That was when it stopped being just a story of betrayal, and became a war. And in this war, I wasn't at a disadvantage anymore. Back at the hotel, my laptop dinged. It was from Michael, and it was short and clinical, with no emotion at all. A petition had been filed, with fraud allegations included, and an emergency motion for temporary custody had been submitted, along with a PDF attachment. I opened it, and saw my own name at the top. Daniel Harrison. Petitioner versus Sophia Harrison, respondent. Seeing it in that format did something to me. We weren't husband and wife anymore. We were sides. As the legal language blurred together, hereby, whereas relief requested, all I could picture was Jackson asleep in a spare bedroom at his grandparents' house, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, completely unaware that his entire world was being redrawn on paper. Michael called to walk me through the next steps. Service, hearings, judges, opposing counsel. He warned me Sophia's reaction would be loud and ugly. After we hung up, I paced the hotel room like a caged animal, the glow of the petition still on the screen. This was real now. No more pretending. No turning back. The next morning, while I was still sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at lukewarm coffee, Michael texted, "She's being served now." I could picture it without being there. The same front door I'd walked through 1,000 times. Her dad's house. The knock. The thick envelope. Later, I heard the rest from Emily. Sophia signed for it. Ripped it open. Expecting what? Maybe a threat, a bluff. Instead, she got 30+ pages of everything she thought she'd kept hidden. My phone began to light up with calls, voicemails, and texts. But I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I listened to one voicemail all the way through. Her parents read over her shoulder, and Emily described how their expressions changed from confusion to disgust, to something like mourning. Sophia screamed and cried, spitting out the words, "How dare you do this to me?" To her, the lady who had plotted to steal my child, my money, and my life apart, couldn't believe I'd finally stopped playing dumb, since for the first time, she wasn't in control of the story. Right after New Year's, I was back in Michael's office, sitting in the same chair, feeling like a defendant in my own life. "We've got a temporary custody and support hearing coming up," he said. "This is where the judge decides who Jackson lives with while everything else plays out." He laid it out plainly. "The court doesn't care who hurt whose feelings." We went over the timeline once more. DNA. The affair. The texts in which Sophia referred to Jackson as an insurance policy. Emily's role. The money moves. Everything. They'd be concerned with stability, routine, and who prioritizes the child when it comes at a cost. Then Michael changed gears, and made me practice my answers. Do not go in there trying to burn your ex, he said. Go in there protecting your son. I must have still been wired because he stopped, looked me dead in the eye, and said, if you lose your temper in that courtroom, you lose your son. Message received. Family court in downtown Dallas isn't glamorous. It's metal detectors, worn carpet, and rows of people who all look like their lives are hanging by a thread. Michael and I sat on a hard wooden bench waiting for our case to be called. Watching cops walk by, lawyers with stacks of files, parents whispering, fighting under their breath. Then Sophia walked in, nice dress, perfect hair, makeup just right, and her own lawyer. Ryan wasn't there, but his name was all over the paperwork. She glanced at me once, as if she was still trying to decide if she was more angry or scared. The clerk finally stepped into the doorway and called out, Harrison. My stomach dropped. That's my name. That's my entire life reduced to a case caption. We went into the courtroom. Michael began slowly, explaining the blood types, the pediatrician's concern, and the private DNA test to Judge Sarah Walker, who looked unimpressed. I raised my right hand to be sworn in, and realized that this was no longer a story, but the rest of my life. Biologically, I'm not Jackson's father, but legally, I've been his sole father for 5 years. Sophia let out a little gasp, as if she were hearing it for the first time. Her lawyer tried to play up the shocked wife angle, but the judge cut it off. We're here for the best interest of the child, she said, without theatrics. Michael then got to the heart of the matter. Intent. And pulled up a timeline. The affair that began before Jackson was born. The money moved into separate accounts. The months-long meetings with divorce attorneys. And then the screen changed. Text messages X'd, her words in black and white, calling Jackson an insurance policy, talking about being set for life off his money, laying out exactly when to drop the DNA bomb for maximum payout. The entire room went silent. Sophia looked out of control for the first time since this started. And Michael hadn't even revealed the strongest evidence yet. When they called Emily, she walked up shaking, swore in, and sat down as if the chair would break under the weight of what she was about to do. Michael asked how she first found out. Emily told the judge about watching Jackson, seeing Sophia's phone light up, Ryan's name, those first messages she couldn't unsee. Nights in the kitchen, where Sophia bragged that once the business reached a certain number, she'd file. And how she'd practice lines about needing stability while already planning her exit from Ryan. Emily's voice cracked when she said, I thought she was joking at first. Then I saw the screenshots. And I realized she meant every word. Sophia's lawyer tried to paint Emily as jealous, bitter, the little sister who never measured up. But Emily didn't flinch. She provided dates, places, context, and linked each narrative with a screenshot Michael had already presented. Judge Walker leaned forward and questioned. In your opinion, did your sister talk about Jackson as if he were her child or an asset? Emily looked straight at Sophia. You stopped seeing Jackson as your son, she said. The day you turned him into a strategy, but the final blow had not yet been delivered. Judge Walker called a short recess, then returned with a stack of papers, and a face that said she'd already made up her mind. She began by saying, in 25 years on this bench, this is one of the clearest cases of parental fraud I've seen. No drama, just facts. She walked through it. Sophia's deception about Jackson's paternity, the way she weaponized the child for money, the premeditated planning in the texts, and then she got to the part that mattered the most to me. Jackson Harrison's legal father, Daniel Harrison, has been granted temporary primary custody, while Sophia Harrison, Jackson's mother, will have supervised visitation on a limited schedule until further review. Sophia's lawyer attempted to object, but the judge quickly shut it down. In terms of finances, she added, due to clear evidence of fraud, this court will not default to a standard 50/50 division of assets. She ordered Ryan to submit to a court-ordered DNA test to establish his obligations, and then she said the line I'll remember for the rest of my life. This court will not reward calculated deception. After court, I didn't go back to the hotel, but drove straight to Emily's place, where Jackson had been staying during the hearing. My chest was tight the entire way, not from fear this time, but from everything finally landing. When I walked in, Jackson took off across the room, yelling, "Daddy," and launching himself at me like he always does. He had no idea a judge had just put in writing what he'd always believed. That I was his father, regardless of what any lab report said. I held him for a longer period of time than usual, long enough for Emily to wipe her eyes and look away. I was relieved and guilty as hell for dragging him through a tempest he never asked for. That night, back at my place, I set up his room like it was permanent, with toys on the shelf, a nightlight on, and his favorite blanket laundered and folded. As I tucked him up, he placed his arms around my neck and begged, "Daddy, will you stay?" "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." The first few weeks felt like boot camp. I was the one making scrambled eggs, packing Jackson's little lunch, and looking for that one sock that always disappears, right when we're late for preschool. I'd drop him off, then head to job sites, juggling calls with contractors and insurance adjusters while watching the clock. It was exhausting, but in a strange way, I felt more like a real father than I ever had before. Sophia kept texting, asking for extra time, accusing me of being heartless when I reminded her that we had to stick to what the court ordered. No more 12-hour days. No more "I'll just get one more estimate." I was reading Jackson a bedtime story one night after a long day of roofs and Legos, and he suddenly said, "This is my favorite day, Daddy." I asked why, and he said, "Because I was with you all day." Sophia's visits, which were supervised at a family center, were supposed to be simple: playtime, refreshments, and a few hours where Jackson could see his mother in a neutral setting. But Sophia couldn't leave it alone, and staff began noticing tiny comments. "Do you ever wish you lived with Mommy instead? Daddy works a lot, doesn't he?" Nothing big at first. Just enough to make my jaw clench when Michael forwarded the reports. Then she pushed it too far. According to the report, one visit, she leaned in and told Jackson, "Daddy might not always be your daddy." The supervisor shut it down on the spot and filed it in court. Sophia emailed me afterward, furious, accusing me of turning Jackson against her, as if I'd written the words she chose to say. Michael just sighed when he read it. "She's digging her own grave, Daniel. You just keep following the rules." Those little violations started stacking up, and the court saw a clear picture. Sophia still put her ego ahead of her son's peace. And every time she did, she made it that much easier for the judge to keep Jackson right where he was. And every new report was another shovel of dirt on her own grave. 4 months later, we were back in front of Judge Walker, and it didn't feel like that first day. There was no shaking hands, no not knowing what was coming, and most of the story had already been recorded. Michael went over everything again. Sophia's lawyer tried to pivot, relying heavily on maternal bond, and how a child needs his mother. As if biology only mattered when it worked in their favor. He also mentioned Sophia's violations of the court order, the supervised visit reports, and the line about "Daddy might not always be your daddy." Judge Walker listened. Then she laid out the pattern, the original lie, using Jackson as leverage, planning a financial ambush, ignoring court orders, and putting her own feelings ahead of Jackson's stability. Finally, she said it. Jackson Harrison's legal father, Daniel Harrison, has been awarded permanent legal and physical custody, while Mrs. Harrison will be allowed supervised visitation on a limited schedule. After court, I sat down with accountants and lawyers, cut Ryan out of the company, restructured ownership, and returned to doing what I knew. Shaw will take appropriate financial responsibility. And then the words that close the chapter. Daniel Harrison will be given permanent custody. Building roofs, selling solar, repairing what was shattered piece by piece, I began therapy. It was the first time in my life that I sat across from someone and said aloud, "My wife and best friend lied to me for years." It felt dumb and feeble coming out of my mouth. But the longer I chatted, the lighter it became. Afternoons transformed into something fresh, taking Jackson to the park, throwing a ball instead of responding to emails, and listening to him talk about dinosaurs and superheroes instead of mentally rereading court documents. I gradually stopped thinking of myself as the guy whose wife cheated and defrauded him. I was just a father, a company owner, a man who had been through hell and walked out. One day in therapy, I eventually broke down and stated, I wasn't stupid. I was trusting. And she used that against me. For the first time, I believed it wasn't all my fault. About 6 months after everything was done, a friend of mine told me I needed to get back out there. I laughed it off. Middle-aged, divorced, single father with court papers still warm. Yes, I sounded like a good catch, but he wouldn't let it go. He mentioned that he knew a woman named Lauren. Worked in technical support, was smart and independent, and had no time for gaming. Finally, I decided to meet her for coffee. I determined I wouldn't lie. When she asked about me, I told her the truth. Divorced, with a 4-year-old boy, and a long, horrible story. She did not flinch or lean in as if it were gossip. She merely nodded and asked, "How's Jackson doing?" Not what occurred, not how horrible it was, just how's your child? We talked for 1 hour. Work, music, and foolish things clients say to her on the phone. Before we left, she smiled and asked another question. "So, Jackson, what is he like?" That's when I realized she saw him as a little boy, not a bargaining chip. I did not rush it. Lauren and I kept things simple for a while. When Jackson was with Emily or on a supervised visit, he would drink coffee, eat lunch, and perhaps have dinner. I wanted to be sure I wasn't just snatching the first act of generosity that came my way. When everything felt good, I presented them. Nothing special, simply pizza from a nearby restaurant. Jackson sat across from her, legs flying, babbling endlessly about superheroes and who would win in a fight. Lauren did not speak over him, or turn to me for permission. She simply listened, asking him which cloak was the coolest, and treated him as a person rather than a prop. I watched from my side of the booth, feeling equally proud and afraid. The last thing I wanted was for him to be harmed again because of my decisions. On his way back to the truck, Jackson reached out and grasped Lauren's hand as they crossed the parking lot. Completely natural. There was no push from me. He questioned in the rearview mirror, "Is Lauren your friend?" "Yeah," I replied. "A good one." For the first time, I felt like I could trust again. I didn't close my eyes. They were wide open. A year later, I ran across Sophia at the most common place in the world, a grocery shop. I was pulling a basket, wondering about what cereal Jackson would eat that week, when I noticed her at the end of the aisle. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older and worn around the eyes. All of the "I'll be set for life" shine had vanished. She paused, then stepped over. "Hey, Daniel," she murmured, her voice soft. She inquired about Jackson's well-being and the progress of the firm. No edge, no attitude, simply worn out. She then said, "I'm sorry," not the dramatic kind, but like someone revealing that a transaction they believed they'd win has finally fallen through. "I thought I was using you," she said gently. "Turns out, I destroyed myself." I simply nodded. "I hope you figure yourself out, Sophia, for Jackson's sake and yours." And the craziest part was that I meant it. Not because I wanted her back, but because I realized I no longer hated her. I just didn't care like I used to. Because what she lost was not money. It was the future she believed she possessed. That night, Jackson chose his favorite book, about a bear who goes on adventures but always returns home safely. Halfway through, his head began to tilt, and his eyes blinked slower. He snuggled closer, one small hand clasping my fingers as it often does when he's about to drift off. By the time the bear returned to his cave, Jackson was out cold, quiet breathing, a warm weight against my side, his hand still gripping mine. I sat there and allowed my mind to wander back through all I had almost lost. Not simply the house, money, or company. I was close to losing this. Bedtime, small hands, being the person he runs to and falls asleep on. Sophia was correct about one thing. Jackson is the most crucial part of my existence. Where she went wrong was assuming I'd be so weak and shattered that she could use him against me. Fatherhood isn't about DNA or surnames. It's all about who shows up and stays. So that is the story. My wife cheated. My son was not biologically mine. Nonetheless, between the law, a smart lawyer, and not losing my cool, I got away with the one thing that truly mattered. Being Jackson's father. If you're a man listening, here's what I've learned. First, do not disregard red flags. When something feels off, it probably is. Second, do not allow someone to transform you into a walking pocketbook. Love is not an excuse for being manipulated. Third, being a father entails showing up every day, not DNA or last names. Seek legal advice as soon as possible. Before you get onto the field, make sure you understand the regulations. Don't let wrath ruin the exact thing you're attempting to safeguard. Trusting does not make you weak. You're strong when you learn and guard what's important. She assumed she was taking half. In the end, I kept what was important: my son, my name, and my self-worth. If this resonated with you, please let me know in the comments. Please share your tale and follow along. There are many more true stories that guys do not tell out loud. My stepsister sobbed that no one would ever love her, then tried to seduce my boyfriend, and my stepmom told me to hand him over. I, a 24-year-old female, need to get this off my chest because I keep wondering if I am the insane one here. This includes my stepmother Margaret, 52, my stepsister Clara, 22, my father Daniel, 55, and my partner of 3 years, Ethan, 26. It's critical to understand how we arrived here. When I was 8 years old, my biological mother abandoned us. She packed her luggage one morning while my father was at work and I was in school. I returned home to find a note on the kitchen counter stating that she could no longer take being a mother. My father had to explain to an 8-year-old why mommy was not coming back. He raised me alone for 2 years. When I was 10 years old, my father met Margaret during a parent-teacher conference. Her daughter, Clara, was in my grade but attended a different school. Clara was born with spinal bifida and needed a wheelchair. Margaret was newly divorced and was working as a substitute teacher to make ends meet. My father operated a successful small plumbing business. Margaret began to come over more frequently. She would invite Clara over for play dates, and eventually she would stay for dinner. I recall being overjoyed to have another girl around, especially one who appeared so kind. Clara was shy and quiet, but always respectful to grown-ups. She looked at you with large eyes that made you want to protect her. My father and Margaret married when I was 12. Margaret left her substitute teaching position because my father's business was flourishing and he could support all of us. We relocated to a larger house with wheelchair access for Clara. Margaret took care of the house while my father worked long hours. Clara and I shared the upstairs, but she had the room with the stair lift. The first several years were good. Margaret made sure I didn't feel excluded, even though Clara required more attention owing to her medical appointments and physical therapy sessions. She helped me with my homework, attended my soccer games, and ensured that I had all I needed for school. Clara and I got on well enough. We watched movies together, and she helped me with math while I assisted her with English. When I was 15, I met Ethan at a summer camp for disabled youngsters and their siblings. The camp organized activities that mixed typical and handicapped children. I was there for Clara, and Ethan was there for his younger brother, who has autism. Ethan was 17 at the time and had already started working part-time while finishing high school. He was gentle with Clara throughout the camp activities and made her giggle a lot. She appeared more extroverted around him than with others. After camp concluded, Ethan began visiting our house. He made friends with Clara first. Actually, she enjoyed talking to him about books and movies. He treated her like any other teenager, not as someone to be pitied. My father liked him since he was respectable and had a job. Margaret seems happy that Clara had gained a friend. Over the next 2 years, Ethan became a regular visitor to our house. He would visit after school and on weekends. Clara always looked up when he arrived. She began inquiring when he was coming over and became unhappy if he canceled plans. I didn't think much of it at the moment. I was preoccupied with my own high school activities and a part-time work in a clothing store. During my senior year, something changed. Ethan started asking me to hang out without Clara on occasion. We began talking more while she was not present. He helped me prepare for my SATs and drove me to job interviews. One evening in the spring, while we were sitting on the back porch after Clara had gone inside, he told me he had liked me for a while but didn't want to make things awkward because we were all friends. We began dating the summer before I left for college. Clara's demeanor altered instantly. She got grumpy and abrupt with me. Whether Ethan came over, she monopolized his attention and became irritated whether he wanted to spend time with both of us or just me. Margaret observed the shift and questioned me about it. I told her I suspected Clara had formed a crush on Ethan. Margaret nodded and said she would speak with her about it. I attended college 3 hours away while Ethan remained local and began working full-time at an auto repair shop. Clara began her senior year in high school. During my travels home, I observed Clara was still cool toward me, but Margaret said that she was simply adjusting to my absence at college. Ethan and I maintained a long-distance romance for 2 years. He paid me visits at school whenever he could, and I returned home on holidays and weekends. We got along well, despite the fact that the distance was difficult at times. Clara gradually warmed up to me again, but she continued to act weirdly while Ethan was present. After graduating from college, I briefly returned home to look for work. Ethan and I discussed moving in together after I found steady job. That's when things became odd again. Clara had recently started community college and was taking online classes because it was more convenient for mobility. She spent most of her time at home and Margaret had started working part-time at the library. Clara kept inquiring about Ethan. When was he coming over? Could she phone him and inquire about something? Did I imagine he'd want to watch a specific movie with her? Ethan stopped over one afternoon while I was attending a job interview. When I arrived home, Dad grabbed me aside and said Clara was acting strangely. She had recommended they watch a romantic movie and was attempting to persuade him to sit closer to her on the couch. When he kept his distance, she burst into tears, claiming that no one would ever love her due to her condition. Ethan felt bad, but claimed he had manufactured an excuse to depart early. I told Margaret about it that evening. She listened, then stated that she would handle it. She reminded me that Clara has minimal social engagement and may not grasp proper boundaries. I accepted the explanation and attempted to be more understanding. 2 weeks later, I started working for a marketing agency in the next town over. Ethan and I discovered a little apartment that we could afford together. Margaret's face became pale when I told her about our upcoming move. Clara began crying and dashed to her room. My father seemed pleased for us, but Margaret barely talked the remainder of the evening. Margaret's attitude cooled during the next month as Ethan and I prepared to move. She mentioned how I was departing my family and how Clara would miss me. Clara alternated between absolutely ignoring me and being excessively clingy. She began to attend more medical appointments and complain about pain more regularly. Clara had what Margaret described as a panic attack a week before we were planned to relocate. She hyperventilated and stated she couldn't take my departure. Margaret insisted on postponing the relocation until Clara felt more stable. My father supported Margaret's proposal. Ethan was frustrated, but he decided to wait a few more weeks. Clara's bouts increased in frequency throughout the course of those weeks. When relocation plans came up, she would have breathing problems or complain of extreme pain. Margaret booked further doctor appointments and stated that the physicians were concerned about Clara's stress levels. My father asked me to be patient and understanding. This pattern maintained for 2 months. Every time Ethan and I tried to schedule a move, Clara had a medical emergency. Margaret would add that the physicians advised against making any big changes in Clara's environment. I began to assume the incidents were not wholly medical, but I felt bad for believing so. Margaret approached me last month and requested a private conversation. She expressed concern about Clara's mental health and mentioned that doctors had indicated Clara would benefit from having Ethan around more often because he tended to calm her down. Margaret requested if Ethan might spend more time at home, possibly even moving into our extra room temporarily, to assist Clara acclimate to the changes. I told Margaret that Ethan was my boyfriend, not Clara's babysitter, and that we had separate plans. Margaret's expression changed. She expressed disappointment with my selfishness and that I did not comprehend how much Clara had been through in her life. She claimed Clara deserved to be happy as well, and that keeping Ethan away from her was cruel. That talk troubled me for several days. When I informed Ethan about it, he was stunned. He stated that he had never indicated to Clara that he was romantically interested in her, and Margaret's proposal made him uncomfortable. Yesterday, things came to a head. Margaret invited me to meet her in a coffee shop to talk. She appeared nervous, which is rare for her. She began by describing how much she had done for me over the years. How she had treated me like her own daughter, and how she had always prioritized my needs. Then she uttered something that made my blood turn cold. She told me Clara was madly in love with Ethan and that her medical episodes were genuine, but were caused by seeing Ethan with me. She explained that Clara had told her that she thought Ethan liked her as well, but was only with me out of responsibility because we had been friends before. Margaret then asked me to break up with Ethan. She explained that it would be a temporary sacrifice that would allow Clara to determine whether she and Ethan were compatible. She promised that if their relationship didn't work out, I could have Ethan back. She said this was my chance to repay her for all the years she had treated me like a mother. I stared at her for a long time, attempting to comprehend what she was asking. I informed her that Ethan was not a toy to be handed around, and that he had never expressed romantic interest in Clara. Margaret claimed that men didn't always know what they wanted, and that Ethan might surprise himself if he gave Clara a chance. Margaret burst into tears as I declined. She said I was selfish and didn't comprehend what it was like to see your child suffer. She said Clara might never find love because of her disabilities, but Ethan was gracious enough to look past it. She begged me to think about what was best for our family. I left the coffee shop without answering her. I drove directly to Ethan's job and told him everything. His reaction was fast and powerful. He described Margaret's request as inappropriate and manipulative. He told me that he had no love feelings for Clara, and would never have them. Now I'm here at our apartment, which we finally received last week despite the family drama, trying to figure out what to do next. Margaret has been calling and messaging me frequently. My father called this morning, asking why I was upsetting Margaret and what was so important that I couldn't compromise for Clara's sake. I haven't told my father exactly what Margaret requested me to do because I don't think he'd believe me. Margaret has always been adept at portraying herself as the rational one who simply wants everyone to be happy. I'm also concerned about what will happen to Clara if everything comes out. But I can't stop thinking about Margaret's request. The more I think about it, the more I realize it has been happening for years. All those times Clara became upset when Ethan and I spent time together. All of the medical issues that conveniently occurred as we attempted to go forward with our relationship. Margaret called me selfish for desiring my own life. Am I wrong to decline Margaret's request? Is there a compromise I'm not seeing? I love my family, but I don't believe I can give up my relationship to make Clara happy. Ethan has been nothing but kind to her, but that does not imply he owes her a sexual connection. I keep debating whether I should tell my father what Margaret wanted me to do. Part of me believes he deserves to know, but I'm also terrified it will destroy our family. Margaret has been a nice stepmother to me in many respects, and I don't want to cause her or Clara any unnecessary pain. How would you handle my situation? Update 1. I didn't plan to be back so soon, but things have taken an unexpected turn. Thank you to everyone who responded to my first post. Many of you felt I should tell my father what Margaret had requested me to do, and you were correct. After posting, I spent several days attempting to figure out how to approach the situation. Margaret kept phoning and texting, imploring me to reconsider her plea. She began giving me articles on how difficult it is for people with disabilities to find love, and how critical it is for family members to support one another. Clara was also texting me, but her messages were different. She kept inquiring when Ethan would come over again, and if he had mentioned her. Ethan was becoming frustrated with the situation. He explained that the frequent family drama was damaging our relationship, and that we needed to set some limits. He suggested I speak with my father and get things out in the open. He was correct, but I kept putting it off for fear of what might happen. Last Tuesday, someone made the decision for me. I was at work when my father contacted me, upset and bewildered. He stated Margaret had informed him that Ethan and I had split up, and that Ethan was now interested in Clara. According to Margaret, I was being difficult and interfering with their new relationship. I was so shocked that I couldn't talk for a time. My father went on to add that Margaret was concerned that I was struggling to accept the shift and that I might need some time away from the family to digest it. He suggested that I stay at Ethan's apartment for a while to allow everyone time to acclimate. That's when I learned how far Margaret would go with her deception. She had planned to drive the issue by lying to my father and portraying it as a done thing. I informed my father that Margaret had lied to him and that Ethan and I were still very much together. He appeared perplexed, and stated that he would need to talk to Margaret about the misunderstanding. I left work early and drove directly home. Margaret and Clara were in the kitchen, and as I entered they both fell quiet. I asked Margaret why she had informed my father that Ethan and I had broken up. She became uneasy and stated that there had been a misunderstanding. She claimed she was talking hypothetically about what might happen if I opted to prioritize Clara's needs. Clara sat at the kitchen table, glancing back and forth with us. I could tell she was aware of what was going on, but I was unsure how much Margaret had informed her about her plans. I asked Clara directly if Margaret had informed her that Ethan and I had split up. Clara nodded, saying Margaret had told her that Ethan would be spending more time with her, and less time with me. That's when I discovered Clara was involved, at least partially. Margaret had been preparing her for the desired conclusion, most likely raising her hopes. I questioned Clara if she truly believed Ethan had romantic feelings for her. She became defensive, claiming that Ethan was always kind to her and had told her she was beautiful and intelligent. I asked when Ethan had said such things. Clara described interactions that seemed friendly and supportive, rather than amorous. Ethan had never said anything untoward to her, but Margaret had obviously misinterpreted his generosity as romantic desire and shared her thoughts with Clara. When my father returned home from work, I wanted to speak with him quietly. I told him everything, from Margaret's request at the coffee shop to her lies about Ethan and I's breakup. My father listened without interrupting, and his look became more serious as I spoke. After I finished, my father remained silent for a long time. He then stated that he needed to hear Margaret's side of the story before making any judgments. He summoned Margaret into the room and asked her to explain what was happening. Margaret's tale was completely different than mine. She claimed I was rude to Clara about her love for Ethan, and that I threatened to keep Ethan away from the family if Clara didn't stop having crushes on him. She clarified that she had just suggested that I consider Clara's sentiments when making relationship decisions, not that I break up with Ethan. She said I misunderstood and exaggerated her request. Clara corroborated Margaret's version of events. She claimed I had been rude to her about Ethan, and Margaret was only trying to protect her. She claimed she never requested Ethan and me to break up, but it upset her when I acted as if she wasn't allowed to have feelings. My father stared between us, evidently trying to figure out who was telling the truth. He explained that this was a complicated scenario in which we all needed to calm down and find a way to work together. He recommended family counseling to help us communicate better. At that point, I understood Margaret had planned this confrontation. She had prepped Clara with a story that portrayed me as the villain, and herself as a protecting mother. She'd undoubtedly been working on this story for weeks, knowing I'd ultimately tell my father about our talk. I informed my father that I would not be engaging in family counseling because Margaret had already demonstrated that she would lie to manipulate the situation. I explained that I needed some time apart from the family to consider whether I wanted to continue a connection with individuals who treated me this way. My father became enraged and accused me of being overly dramatic. He stated that families go through difficult times, and that walking away was not the solution. He accused me of being difficult and selfish, as my biological mother had been. That comment hit me hard. I'd spent my entire youth trying not to be like my original mother, who had abandoned us when things became tough. But I recognized that remaining in a position in which I was being misled and lied to was not loyalty, it was simply tolerating abuse. I packed my stuff and went to stay with Ethan. That was 2 weeks ago, and I have not returned to the house since. My father has called multiple times, wanting me to come home and talk things out. Margaret has sent messages apologizing for the misunderstanding and stating that she only wants the best for everyone. Clara texted to ask why I am being so harsh to the family. But this is what really upsets me. None of them have admitted what truly occurred. Margaret has not revealed that she asked me to break up with Ethan. Clara has not admitted that she hoped I would. My father has not admitted that Margaret lied to him about Ethan and my breakup. Instead, they're all acting as if this is just a family feud that got out of control. They want me to return and pretend nothing happened, to resume normalcy. But I can't do it now that I know Margaret's capabilities and how far she's willing to go to accomplish what she wants for Clara. Ethan has been absolutely supportive throughout this. He's made it obvious that he doesn't want anything to do with Margaret's manipulation and is committed to our partnership. He's also offered to speak with my father personally about what happened, but I'm not sure it would help at this time. The hardest aspect is that I still love my family, despite everything that has transpired. Margaret cared for me for many years and was not always manipulative. Clara is my sister, even if she isn't dealing with this situation well. My father reared me and worked hard to provide for our family. However, I am beginning to see that love does not imply condoning hurtful treatment. Margaret crossed a line when she asked me to give up my relationship for Clara's pleasure. She broke another line when she lied to my father and attempted to manipulate the situation to achieve her goals. I don't know what will happen next. My father has stated that if I do not return home and straighten things out with the family, he will discontinue financial assistance for me. Margaret and Clara are acting as if I was the one who started this whole issue by being selfish and unforgiving. Part of me wonders whether I should just return and attempt to make peace. It would be easier than dealing with all of the strife and uncertainty. But every time I think about it, I recall Margaret sitting across from me in that coffee shop, asking me to break up with my boyfriend so that her daughter might have him. I recall the look in her eyes as she lied to my father about what had transpired. I can't go back to pretending everything was fine. I can't go back to avoiding Clara's emotions or accepting Margaret's manipulation as normal family dynamics. So I guess I'm seeking for advice again. How do you restore your life if your family turns on you for refusing to be manipulated? How do you deal with the guilt of stepping away from folks who say they love you but don't respect your boundaries? Update 2. I wish I could say things improved following my last report, but they really deteriorated significantly before improving. I'm writing from my new apartment, which I share with Ethan, and I finally feel like I can breathe again. After my last post, I was away from my family for almost 3 weeks. During that time, Margaret intensified her efforts to persuade me to return. She began calling my workplace, informing my supervisor that there was a family emergency and that I needed to get home immediately. When my supervisor handed me the messages, I had to explain that there was no emergency, and my stepmother was lying. Margaret also reached out to some of my college buddies via social media. She told them I was experiencing a mental breakdown and requested them to persuade me to return home. Several friends called me, concerned, and I had to explain the true situation to them. It was awkward and stressful. The worst aspect was what she did to Ethan. Margaret managed to get his work phone number and called his employer. She informed Ethan's supervisor that he had acted inappropriately with a disabled family member and that the family was considering filing charges. Ethan's employer summoned him to the office the next day for an awkward chat. Ethan had to describe the entire issue to his manager, including presenting text exchanges between us proving we were in a committed relationship. Fortunately, his boss trusted him and recognized that this was a family dispute rather than a criminal matter. However, Ethan was shocked by the incident, which made us both realize how far Margaret was willing to go. That experience convinced me that I needed to take more serious measures. I couldn't continue to live in limbo while Margaret tried to destroy my relationship and reputation. I resolved to write a lengthy letter to my father, outlining everything that had happened, including Margaret's initial request, and all of her following lies and manipulations. In the letter, I told my father that I loved him but couldn't have a relationship with him if he kept enabling Margaret's conduct. I stated that I was willing to keep a connection with him independent from Margaret and Clara, but only if he admitted what had transpired and stopped expecting me to tolerate Margaret's manipulation. I also sent a letter to Clara. I told her that I didn't blame her for having feelings for Ethan, but she needed to understand that those feelings did not give her the right to be in my relationship. I told her I wished she could find happiness with someone who genuinely wanted to be with her, but that person would never be Ethan. I sent both letters and waited. For a week I had heard nothing. Then my father called and requested to meet me for coffee. He sounded exhausted and older than I recall. When we met, my father looked like he hadn't slept well. He claimed he questioned Margaret about what I had stated in my letter. Initially, she denied everything and claimed I was lying to turn him against her. But as he probed her for details about specific conversations, her story began to unravel. My father claimed that the turning point came when he asked Margaret directly if she had ever asked me to break up with Ethan. Margaret eventually revealed that she had advised that I prioritize Clara's happiness, but she argued that it was an acceptable request from one family member to another. When my father asked her why she had lied to him about Ethan and I breaking up, Margaret explained that she had been trying to spare Clara from disappointment and that she believed I would finally see things her way. She claimed she had never planned for things to get that complex. My father expressed regret that he had not believed me right away. He claimed Margaret had always been so skilled at explaining things in a way that made her appear sensible and compassionate that he had come to rely on her judgment above his own intuition. He apologized for comparing me to my biological mother and suggested we concentrate on mending our relationship. I informed my father that while I appreciated his apologies, I needed to see actual improvements before I could trust him again. I told him he needed to set limits with Margaret about her behavior toward me and Ethan, and he shouldn't expect me to sacrifice my own happiness for Clara's emotional needs. My father agreed to those conditions, but he also asked if I would consider giving the family another chance to sort things out. He stated Margaret apologized and wanted to make things right. He suggested that we all get down and have an honest chat about what had happened. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a single family meeting. I told my father it would be at a neutral site, not their house, and that Ethan would accompany me. I also stated that if Margaret lied or tried to manipulate the situation during the discussion, I would leave without giving them another chance. The encounter was disastrous. We met at a restaurant, and Margaret had prepared an entire speech about how much she loved me and apologized for any misunderstandings, but when I pressed her to explicitly state that she had asked me to break up with Ethan, she couldn't. Instead, Margaret continued stating that she merely wanted me to think about Clara's sentiments, or that she had suggested I think about what was best for the entire family. She refused to use the word breakup, despite the fact that it was exactly what she had requested me to do. Clara was even worse. She accused me of being jealous of her connection with Ethan and attempting to keep them apart because I was insecure. She said Ethan had been leading her on by being kind to her, and I was forcing him to pretend he didn't have feelings for her. Ethan eventually spoke up, telling Clara that he was never romantically interested in her and never would be. He explained that he had been kind to her as a friend and as my sister, but she had mistaken his friendship as anything more. Clara burst into tears, explaining that Ethan was only saying that because I was influencing him. Margaret sprang to Clara's defense, claiming Ethan was being unkind to a vulnerable person. She stated she couldn't imagine Ethan would reject Clara only because of her disabilities. That's when I understood that nothing had changed. Margaret and Clara were still living a fantasy in which Ethan secretly desired to be with Clara, but was thwarted by mean, selfish me. They had learned nothing from the previous few months of conflict. I stepped up to leave, but my father encouraged me to stay and keep trying. He stated that families should work through their problems rather than giving up when things were unpleasant. I informed him that I had tried to sort out the problem, but Margaret and Clara refused to accept reality. As we walked out of the restaurant, Margaret told me that she would never give up on her daughter's happiness. She stated I could go away as my real mother did, but she would always fight for Clara. That comment was the last straw for me. Margaret saw me as a hindrance to Clara's happiness, rather than as the daughter she was expected to love and protect. No matter what I did or how much I sacrificed, it would never be enough because Margaret would always choose Clara's desires over mine. Ethan and I left town the following day. We were intending to relocate anyway because Ethan had received a job offer in another city. The work paid better and provided us with a fresh start away from the family strife. We've been here for 6 weeks, and it's been serene. No manipulative phone calls, No guilt trips about family loyalty, and no one asking me to give up my happiness for someone else's. Ethan enjoys his new career, and I found work at a marketing agency that is far superior to my previous position. My father has called a few times. Our chats have been cordial but distant. He keeps hoping that I will change my mind regarding Margaret and Clara, but I have made it obvious that this will not happen. I told him he was free to visit us here if he wanted to keep a connection with me, but I would not be returning to deal with Margaret's manipulation. Margaret sent me a farewell text message last week. She expressed her wish that I was content with my decision to leave my family for a man who would most likely abandon me ultimately. She claimed Clara was heartbroken, and blamed me for being selfish and harsh. After that, I blocked her number. I also blocked Clara, who had been messaging me about how unjust I was being, and how much I was harming the family by remaining away. The point is, I no longer feel guilty. For years I accepted that my position in the family was to be understanding, adaptable, and willing to make sacrifices for Clara's needs. I assumed it was what good sisters did, and what appreciative daughters owed their stepmother. But now I understand that Margaret never considered me her daughter. She regarded me as a resource that Clara might profit from. When I ceased being useful in that way, she was willing to spread lies about me, damage my relationship, and attempt to harm my reputation. Clara never thought of me as her sister. She regarded me as a competitor for Ethan's attention, and finally as a barrier to obtaining what she desired. She was willing to take part in Margaret's deception and manipulation because it served her interests. My father was so committed to keeping the harmony in his household that he was willing to compromise my well-being rather than confront Margaret's actions. He wanted me to continue absorbing Margaret's manipulation so he wouldn't have to cope with the conflict of confronting her. None of that was love, despite everyone's claims. Love does not require you to give up your happiness for someone else's convenience. Love does not force you to accept falsehoods and manipulation in order to maintain family unity. I'm starting a new life with individuals that genuinely care about my well-being. Ethan has never asked me to give up anything for his benefit, and he has never lied to me or attempted to manipulate me. This is what a healthy relationship looks like. I'm not sure if my father will ever comprehend what happened, or if he'll always blame me for splitting up the family. But I have no influence over his choices. I can only manage my own actions, therefore I prefer to surround myself with people that treat me with respect and honesty. Update 3. I'm writing this final update to bring this chapter of my life to an end and to address some of the issues that have been raised. It's been 6 months since I moved away with Ethan, and I can honestly say that it was the best decision I ever made. Life here has been good. Ethan was promoted at his job, and we are saving money to buy a house. I work for a company where my supervisor values my abilities and does not have to deal with family members contacting about bogus problems. We've become friends with our neighbors and joined a hiking group. I never imagined I could have such a normal, quiet existence. My father came to visit us twice. The first visit was unpleasant because he kept bringing up Margaret and Clara, asking whether I missed them and if I was willing to forgive them. He appeared to assume that I had had enough time to recover from what had transpired. I had to explain that this was not about harboring grudges, but about protecting oneself from people who have demonstrated a willingness to lie and mislead in order to obtain their desired outcome. The second appointment went well. My father seemed to realize I wasn't coming back, so he stopped trying to persuade me to reconcile with Margaret and Clara. We talked about other things for a few hours, and it felt like we were back in our typical father-daughter connection. He stated he was proud of the life Ethan and I were creating together, but my father also told me several things that reinforced I had made the right decision to leave. Apparently, once I moved away, Clara was confident Ethan would realize he missed her and return for her. Margaret reinforced this dream, suggesting they drive to our new city to surprise him. My father put a halt to that idea, but only because he was concerned about how it would appear if they arrived up unexpectedly. He didn't seem to grasp that the idea was unacceptable, because Ethan had expressed his feelings clearly, and stalking someone is bad no matter how it appears. Margaret also began telling others in their social circle that I had turned against the family because I couldn't accept Clara's happiness. According to my father, she was portraying herself as the patient mother whose disabled kid was being bullied by a jealous stepsister. Some people believed her narrative, which was not surprising to me. Clara eventually began dating someone she met in an online support group for people with disabilities. My father claimed she seemed pleased with this new person. And Margaret was overjoyed that Clara was finally receiving the attention she deserved. Apparently, neither of them recognized the irony in Clara's ability to find someone who wanted to be with her once she quit obsessing over Ethan. My father asked if I would consider congratulating Clara on her new relationship. I told him no. Clara had cooperated in Margaret's attempts to manipulate and control my life, and she had never apologized or admitted her mistakes. The fact that she had discovered pleasure did not excuse her previous actions. Margaret attempted one final manipulation about 3 months ago. She messaged me through my father, stating Clara was getting married, and asked me to be her maid of honor. The message stated that here was my opportunity to be the bigger person and demonstrate that family was more important than previous arguments. I informed my dad to inform Margaret that I would not be attending Clara's wedding in any manner. I also told him that if Margaret attempted to contact me again through him or anyone else, I would cut off contact with him as well. I had set clear boundaries, and I was not going to let Margaret continue to break them just because she wore a bridal gown during her manipulation. My father was disappointed, but said he understood. He also confessed that he thought Margaret's request was improper considering what had occurred. It was the first time he had directly critiqued Margaret's behavior, and it meant a lot to me that he could now see her clearly. Clara got married 2 weeks ago. My father gave me a snapshot from the wedding, and Clara appeared to be really delighted with her new spouse. I was happy for her, but I did not regret not being present. That wedding reflected a family that had never seen me as anything more than a tool for Clara's advantage. Ethan and I are getting engaged next month. We're arranging a little ceremony for a few close pals. My father will be invited, but Margaret and Clara will not. I've learned that you get to select who observes the most significant moments in your life, and I choose to surround myself with individuals who have earned the right to be present. Some may believe I'm being overly harsh, or that I should have tried more to make things work with my family. But I knew that pushing harder would have only resulted in more manipulation and abuse. Margaret would never have ceased attempting to control my life for Clara's sake. Clara would never have stopped considering me as a barrier to her happiness. The truth is that Margaret and Clara did not love me. They appreciated what I could do for them and made their lives easier. When I ceased being useful in that way, they were willing to spread lies about me, undermine my relationship, and isolate me from anyone who supported me. My father adored me, but he cherished his tranquil household more. He was willing to risk my safety to avoid disagreement with Margaret. That is not the love I deserved. And it is not the love I am ready to accept any longer. I don't wake up every morning wondering what manipulation Margaret will try next, or what emotional crisis Clara will have if she doesn't get her way. I don't have to walk on eggshells or give up my own needs to keep the peace. I don't have to pretend that lies, misunderstandings, or abuse constitute love. Instead, I wake up next to someone who has never asked me to be less than myself for his benefit. I work in an environment where my efforts are valued. My friends respect and support my boundaries and decisions. I have an honest relationship with my father, even if we are not as close as we once were. This is what happens when you refuse to accept hurtful treatment from those who pretend to love you. This is what it looks like when you prioritize your personal well-being over others' comfort. I'm not telling my story to gain sympathy or to persuade anyone that I made the correct decision. I'm publishing it because I wish someone had told me years ago that family members that control and lie to you aren't behaving out of love, regardless of what they claim. I wish someone had warned me that leaving toxic people does not mean giving up on family. It's about protecting yourself so you may have healthy relationships. If family members are asking you to sacrifice your happiness for someone else's benefit, or if individuals are lying about you to get what they want, you do not have to stay and accept it. You do not owe somebody your peace of mind or well-being simply because you share DNA or were raised by them. Margaret cared for me for many years, and I'm grateful. But appreciation does not imply that I had to let her dictate my adult life or ruin my relationship. Clara is disabled and experiences obstacles that I do not have to cope with, and I feel compassion for her. However, her challenges did not grant her the right to my lover or to join in attempts to manipulate me. My father worked hard to provide for our family when my biological mother departed, and I am grateful for everything he did. But his sacrifices did not imply that I had to sacrifice myself to keep his second wife happy. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most will harm you the most because they believe their love gives them the power to control you. Sometimes walking away is the only way to preserve yourself. I don't think Margaret, Clara, or my father will ever realize what they did wrong. I'm not sure whether they will ever recognize that their treatment of me was wrong and detrimental, but I don't need their understanding or apologies to move on with my life. I have Ethan, who treats me like a partner rather than a possession. My buddies respect my boundaries. My skills are valued at my current employment. I have a future that belongs to me, not to others who believe they know what is best for me. That is enough. That is more than enough. That was all I needed, but I was reluctant to ask for it because I believed I owed others my loyalty, even if they didn't deserve it. If anyone reading this is coping with family members who manipulate, lie, or attempt to dominate their lives, please know that you deserve better. You deserve partnerships based on respect and honesty. You deserve the freedom to make your own life decisions without having to deal with the emotions of others. You do not need to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't have to give up your happiness to express your love. You do not have to stay in hurtful situations simply because it is difficult to leave. This is my final update because this chapter of my life has concluded. I'm no longer the girl who tries to make everyone happy at her own expense. I am not the daughter who tolerated manipulation because she was grateful for a roof over her head. I'm not the sister who prioritizes someone else's desires over her own. I'm simply Olivia, building a life with someone who loves me unconditionally and making decisions based on what's best for me, rather than what's easier for others. It took longer than it should have, but I got here. And if you're reading this and see yourself in my tale, you can do it too. My father hid a daughter for years. Now her mother demands I evict my best friend so she can live with me, but I refuse to fix their broken family. When I was 14, my world was devastated. It immediately became clear that my father had been leading a secret life right beneath our eyes. He had fathered a kid with one of his staff, a 1-year-old girl, without my mother's knowledge. Could you imagine? We were just your normal family. And then I realized I had a half-sister no one had ever mentioned. My brother, who is 2 years older than me, was so distraught that he cut off communication with our father for an entire year. And I could barely look him in the eyes after that. I never knew if my mother had known all along, or if she was simply heartbreakingly afraid of losing him. Perhaps it was because he had always been the breadwinner, earning a nice living and supporting all of us. Who knows? But I do recall her clinging to him through group therapy, counseling, and countless arguments. Against all obstacles, they remained together. After that much, you'd think he'd cut all contact with the other family permanently. But that never happened. He quit dating Karen's mother, although she remained a close friend. Surprisingly, my mother and the other woman appeared to have formed a strange sister-wife relationship. The entire experience was weird. Every holiday since then, Christmas, Easter, you name it, this woman would show up, knowing my father was married but still deciding to assist him damage our family. Her small child, my supposed sister, would also be there. And my brother and I were supposed to accept her as family. I simply couldn't do it. My brother took years to come around, and for a long, he skipped all holidays. But when Karen turned 4, he made an abrupt U-turn. He instantly chose to be her brother. He still refuses to speak to our father or Karen's mother, but he has somehow become Karen's protector. Maybe I sound bitter, but I have never considered Karen's mother as anything other than a homewrecker. And Karen, she was a living reminder of how everything had fallen apart. Intellectually, I knew my father was equally too responsible, but as a devastated teenager, it was always easier to aim my rage toward them. I made it plain. Karen would never become my sister. That single reality has resulted in years and years of animosity. No holiday or gathering has seemed right since. I could give you a detailed account of all the drama over the years, but it would take forever, and there is one major point here. Karen just decided to switch schools. Something happened at her previous one, but I honestly don't care about her high school drama. For perspective, in my nation, high schools can be specialized in areas such as painting, confectionery, and hairdressing. Karen withdrew out of her more general grammar high school, where she was struggling to keep up, and opted to try her hand at art school instead. She is not a prodigy, decent, but nothing spectacular, yet well enough to get into a highly recognized school. Coincidentally, the school is located close where I reside. Karen and her mother still live close to my parents, around 3 hours away, so getting to and from school would be difficult. 2 days ago, we had another awkward family meal. Yes, Karen and her mother were present, much to my dismay. The subject came up. Where was Karen planning to reside while attending school? I could tell they were circling around the genuine question, hoping I'd respond before they had to ask. When I didn't bite, they eventually spelled it out for me. Would I allow Karen to move in with me for the school year? Monday through Friday, she spends holidays with her mother. And get this. They marketed it as a major benefit to her because I also work in art. Suddenly, my so-called useless illustration business provided the ideal atmosphere for their darling kid. Let me explain why I'm saying no. First, there are decent dorms close to campus. Certainly not a 5-star motel, but ideal for a high school student. Second, I don't like Karen. I've always been open about our lack of relationship, and no shared DNA will miraculously heal that. Third, my brother lives less than an hour away from the art school. He doesn't live next door, yet he gets along well with her. Fourth, when I went to Karen's mother for support during a difficult time and begged for a favor, she laughed in my face and flatly informed me we were not family. But now, we're only family when it suits her. Fifth, my flat is modest, and while I officially have a second bedroom, it is rented to my best buddy. I'm not kicking my closest friend out, no matter what guilt trip anyone tries to put on me. Sixth, they never asked, rather, they demanded. When I hesitated, they swooped upon me like vultures. Karen has anxiety. Dorm living would be hard on her. You're her only real sister. God wants us to be a family. I hold no religious beliefs. My brother's girlfriend is pregnant and nervous around strangers, so Karen can't stay there. And I should just evict my roommate because family comes first. The ridiculousness. To be honest, I could tell from how they were acting that they wanted me to hold out for a polite period of time before giving in. But the moment the argument heated up and people began shouting, I dropped all pretense and simply said no. That was it. Karen raced out of the home in sobs, and everyone else became silent. I was instructed to leave, so I did, and someone said something ridiculous about how I should go sign up for kindergarten because I clearly wasn't acting like an adult. Karen's mother later messaged me, and I marked her as read. My father tried calling, but I didn't answer. I refuse to be pushed, yelled at, or guilt-tripped into doing anything I find very unpleasant. I know it's not Karen's fault she ended up in this mess, but she's not my family, and I don't owe her anything in my life, let alone my house. That is where I stand. Update 1. When I arrived home, I found Karen sobbing on the sofa, her face buried in her hands, completely unraveling. My roommate instantly grabbed me aside and explained what had just transpired. Karen apparently arrived expecting to meet me and was surprised to find my roommate instead. She instantly inquired whether my roommate was visiting or about to leave, to which my roommate responded calmly that she was neither. That created a one-sided dispute, with Karen getting louder and louder as my roommate tried to calm her down and de-escalate the situation. Karen soon appeared to be experiencing a breakdown. My roommate described it as a panic attack, and I have no reason to dispute her at all. But as soon as Karen noticed me, her meltdown changed course. She began yelling at me, calling me a terrible sister, a liar, and a leech, and hurled more accusations my way. I could understand the nasty sister aspect, but being a liar and a leech ached. I tried not to snap back, kept my cool, and eventually calmed her down enough to discuss without revealing our family crisis to the entire building. That's when the truth started to emerge. Molly and my father had been using the prospect of Karen living with me and attending that prestigious art high school as leverage for at least 6 months. Since Karen opted to quit her stepping stone high school, they have thrown it at her repeatedly. You will not be able to live with your sister unless you maintain decent marks. Clean your room or turn in your phone. Even worse, they requested that she drop her friends and delete her social media accounts. Essentially, the prospect of living with me had been dangled in front of her for years. I felt terrible when I realized that. To be honest, I didn't disbelieve her story for 1 second. It was classic Dad. Growing up, he used to promise us enormous things and make us cry in the hopes that he would eventually deliver. Perhaps not. Molly apparently went so far as to tell Karen that I had consented to a 1-week trial run and that she would then spend the rest of the summer at her father's house to prepare for the actual relocation. I had no clue they'd promised her that, especially since I'd made it clear from the start that I opposed the notion. Looking back, perhaps they assumed that if Karen came up at my house, I'd simply yield, having stepped back so many times in the past to keep the peace. Perhaps having Karen there in my home would make it impossible for me to refuse. And I would have let myself to get steamrolled again so as not to ruin her fantasy. The whole thing sucked. But for the first time, Karen and I genuinely spoke, really chatted. We spent 40% of the time trash-talking our shared parent. 40% were ranting about Molly. And the rest was entirely about art. Oddly enough, I discovered a silver lining in that catastrophe. I'm not saying I'm suddenly ready to be the doting big sister or take her home, but for once, there was some genuine connection behind the anguish. She eventually flopped on my bed and fell asleep before her parents arrived to fetch her up. I waited there, emotionally tired. My father finally arrived at 11 p.m., furious that Karen had fallen asleep and perplexed that I hadn't simply let her spend the night. But I became even furious. After piecing together Karen's story, I was itching to hear his side as well. At the very least, he listened. I let off a 5-minute rant so quickly that I could hardly breathe. And by the time he managed to say something, I doubt he remembered half of what I had said. I hardly gave him a chance. He only told me that he'd call me later to adequately address it. Now I'm waiting for that call. Feeling emptier than ever. I'm so emotionally spent that I can barely think straight at work. I ended up staying at a friend's apartment for the night. Nothing romantic. just the comfort of platonic connection, which we have had since we were children. I know I have a lot to figure out, so I've started building a list of everything I need to accomplish when I get the motivation to try again. Right now, all I want is some clarity and tranquility, if I can find it. Update 2. I apologize for the silence. Life has been so hectic that finding time or energy to update seemed impossible. But I have to explain what happened. I really enjoyed all of the advice and knowing that I wasn't insane, even if this update will probably disappoint anyone expecting for a good conclusion. Karen, my half-sister, appeared at my door not long after everything had gone wrong, as if the universe was playing a cruel little joke on me. The timing could not have been more absurd. I did not squander a second. I contacted my father and informed him that unless he picked her up right away, I would contact the police. He arrived, claiming that he would explain everything. But predictably, it took some serious cornering before he said anything. Perhaps he thought that if he told me just enough, I would stop bothering him. But I needed answers, so I met with him face to face last week. He had no way out at that point. What I discovered was every bit as wild as I had expected. Karen's mother, Molly, as I've dubbed her, was in grave financial problems. Part of me wanted to blame it on her being too young to have a child, but Molly's overall sense of maturity seems stunted. Perhaps there was a traumatic childhood. Perhaps not. I don't care at this moment since whatever happened, Karen is the one who is suffering the price. Molly had created a pile of debt for herself by taking out too many loans with no practical possibility of repaying them. She is currently losing everything as a result of the debt reduction process. Even her pay is being reduced by the state, leaving her with barely enough to exist. To make ends meet, she decided to sell her flat and move into something so little that I literally cringed when I saw it. She wanted to stay at my father's house, but fortunately my mother had already established tough boundaries. Molly and Karen were not allowed to stay at the house for more than a week. Only on special occasions, such as when Molly's building was being constructed. What's her plan? Purchase this pretentious chicken coop of a studio apartment and squeeze herself and Karen into the cramped area. The rationale must have been, perhaps someone else will step in to help, because I was suddenly receiving guilt-tripping indications that I should take Karen in, as if that would solve everything. Despite my instincts, I let Karen to stay with me for a while. It was disastrous. Living with her was impossible. I never recognized how distressed she was because I never spent enough time with her to fully understand it. She was troubled by night terrors, leaving my best friend, a true light sleeper who has a physically demanding job, weary every day. Furthermore, Karen appeared to be allergic to cleaning and snatched my watch. After that, I called my father and told him I wasn't going to put up with this longer. My father begged me, virtually groveling to let her stay. He promised she'd get better. But, even if it were true, I wasn't going to be the one going through it. I drew a line in the sand. I would only consider bringing Karen in provided she attended therapy. However, Molly, in her infinite wisdom, does not believe in therapy. Of course. Honestly, I should not have been surprised. I expected my father to step up and take Karen in, but my mother was insistent. She flatly refused. That resulted in a massive dispute. And in the end, my mother had a panic attack and was hospitalized. That was the last straw. Karen was sent back to her mother. Molly was furious. At me, not at her own decisions. According to her, I am the only person in the world who could provide them with a proper home, but I am simply too nasty to make room for them. Hatred is her word. But to be honest, a part of me is genuinely upset, enraged at being put in this situation. Then my brother got involved, berating me for not stepping up, despite the fact that he owns a house. But of course, he has a newborn baby, which is meant to relieve him of all responsibility while shifting all of it to me. He had the audacity to argue that blood should be thicker than water. When I told him that my best friend lives with me, he acted as if my blood was irrelevant in this situation. Now it appears like everything is in limbo. My father is constantly trying to wear down my mother, and when he isn't bickering with her, he makes passive-aggressive insults at me. Molly bombards me with her own brand of guilt-inducing messages, while my brother no longer bothers to hide his disgust. I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. I'm definitely considering cutting everyone off entirely. It's honestly devastating to see my entire family turn against me. At least I have a best friend. She's probably the only nice thing to come out of this situation. I still feel bad about putting her through exhaustion and allowing my father to manipulate me for so long, but I'm eternally grateful she's still with me. Update 3. I thought it couldn't be any worse. I was mistaken. Last Tuesday, my best friend arrived home from work looking really exhausted. At first, I assumed it was simply another horrible day at her job. But when she sat me down with that serious expression that I'd only seen twice in our 15-year friendship, my stomach fell. She had been receiving calls, anonymous ones, always while I wasn't around. The caller would hang up as soon as she answered, but she could hear background noise, a television and children playing. It was creepy enough that she had started allowing calls to go to voicemail. Molly arrived at her workplace 3 days ago. My best buddy works at a veterinary clinic and Molly walked in, claiming she needed to address critical family concerns involving me. She accosted my friend during her lunch break and went on this insane rant about how I was poisoning everyone against Karen. I was so selfish and callous, and, this is where things get really crazy, how my friend was facilitating my cruelty by staying with me instead of making room for actual family. My friend, bless her, told Molly where she could shove her opinions and threatened to contact security. But Molly was not done. She even had the nerve to offer my friend money, 2 months' rent, to move out temporarily so Karen could have the room. When my pal rejected, Molly's facade slipped completely. She began yelling about how my friend was a leech living off me. How she was probably sleeping with me anyway, and how no true friend would get in the way of family. Molly had to be escorted out by security, but not before she shouted loudly enough for the entire waiting area to hear that my buddy was a homewrecker who kept sisters apart. My poor friend was horrified, especially because her employer and numerous clients witnessed the entire episode. But here's when things get very twisted. When I approached my father about Molly's actions, expecting him to be shocked, he instead attempted to defend her. "She's desperate," he explained. "You have to understand, she's losing everything." When I pointed out that harassment and workplace stalking are unacceptable regardless of someone's financial condition, he had the audacity to claim that if I had just aided the family from the start, none of this would have happened. That's when it clicked. I asked him directly if he knew about Molly's plot to harass my friend. The stillness was so extended that I feared the phone had been dropped. Finally, he acknowledged that Molly had stated that she might try to reason with my roommate personally. He did not stop her. He knew she was going to ambush my pal at work, but he did nothing. I was so upset that I couldn't talk, but then he delivered another bombshell. Apparently my mother has been having what he refers to as episodes since the hospital incident. She's been obsessed with the whole thing, staying up all night studying Karen's new school, and even calling the admissions office pretending to be Karen's guardian to inquire about housing choices. My father appears really concerned about her mental health. But instead of getting her professional assistance, he's been attempting to address the problem by pressuring me to take Karen in. "If you just agree to let her stay for the school year," he added, "your mother could finally have peace. We could all move past this." The deception was so obvious that it made me laugh, a bitter, hollow sound that astonished even me. I explained to him that it was not my obligation to improve Mom's mental health at the expense of my own peace and safety. That's when he completely lost it. "Safety," he said. "She's a 17-year-old girl, not a criminal. Your own sister." "Half-sister," I clarified. "And not by choice." He hung up on me. 2 days later, my brother arrived at my apartment unexpectedly. I should have known something was up when he knocked instead of just strolling in, as he always does. He appeared weary. The baby has been keeping him up, and his girlfriend has been struggling with postpartum depression. I felt a tinge of sympathy until he began speaking. Dad contacted him with a new solution. My brother's house has more space, and he's allegedly on better terms with Karen, so perhaps she should move in with him. But here's the kicker. His girlfriend flatly refused. She's already struggling enough without adding a difficult adolescent, especially one who has night terrors and behavioral issues. Naturally, my brother decided it was all my fault. If I had taken Karen in from the start, none of them would be experiencing this stress. His lover would not be weeping herself to sleep due to Dad's pressure. Mom would not be experiencing breakdowns. Everyone's troubles would be solved if I simply did the right thing. I mentioned that he might have offered to take Karen himself months ago, but he shook his head. "I never wanted her living with us," he told me. "But you live alone with just a friend. You have the space, you work from home. It makes sense." The arrogance was astonishing. When I informed him that I'd already tried living with Karen and it had been a disaster, he remarked that perhaps I hadn't tried hard enough. Maybe if I'd been more patient, understanding and sisterly, I'd have had enough. I told him that if he was worried about family duties, he could move his pregnant girlfriend and newborn baby in with Dad and Mom, freeing up his home for Karen and Molly. The expression on his face was priceless, complete terror at the concept. "That's completely different," he exclaimed. "I have a family to think about." "So do I said. "My chosen family. My friend who's been with me through everything while you all demand I throw her out for someone who stole from me." He departed after that, but not before informing me that I was being selfish, and would later regret pushing everyone away. Maybe he is right. Maybe I'm selfish. But I'm tired of being the family's scapegoat, the one everyone expects to give up her happiness and stability to keep the peace. I'm tired of being guilt-tripped, manipulated, and having my boundaries violated. My companion and I have begun looking at flats in a different section of the city, somewhere my family is unaware of. I haven't informed them yet, but I believe I'm done with everything. With each of them. The saddest part? I really feel horrible for Karen. Nothing is actually her fault. She's merely a child caught in the midst of adult chaos. But I can't save her without destroying myself, and I've finally accepted that it's not my responsibility to try. Update 4. I never imagined I'd be back here writing another update. But life has a terrible sense of humor. The apartment hunting did not go as planned. It turns out that finding a suitable home that welcomes pets within our budget, my friend has a cat, I failed to mention, is more difficult than imagined. But it is the least of our current issues. 3 weeks ago my buddy Anna returned home, looking as if she had seen a ghost. I was in the middle of a client call when she rushed through the door, so I had to finish up fast before she could tell me what occurred. She was at the grocery store when she ran into Maris, my brother's girlfriend. Maris apparently looked horrible. Dark circles and disheveled. The works. Maris burst into tears right in the cereal aisle after what should have been a courteous hello. Between sobs, Maris told Anna everything. My brother has been putting intense pressure on her to reconsider taking Karen in. He comes home every day with new arguments. Karen's grades are dropping. Living in that small studio with Molly has made her depressed. It's only temporary till they figure something else out. But Maris is struggling to keep her head above water with the baby and her postpartum depression. The thought of adding a wild teenager to the mix made her fear. Here's where things get twisted. My brother supposedly told Maris that I'd largely agreed to accept Karen but was just being picky about practicalities. He made it sound as if I was playing games while a child was suffering. Maris felt bad about denying because, in her perspective, I was already willing to help but only needed to be convinced correctly. Anna, bless her, corrected the record right away. She told Maris everything that had transpired, including the theft, night terrors, and Molly's job harassment. Maris became pale and inquired why no one had told her about this. That's when Anna learned my brother was lying to everyone, weaving different versions of the narrative to make them feel bad. But wait, things get worse. Maris apologized to Anna before saying something that made my blood run cold. I just wish I understood why he's so desperate to help her now when he completely ignored her for years. When Anna asked what she meant, Maris said that my brother had been having secret phone chats with someone while constantly stepping outdoors or going to the garage. She assumed it was work-related, until she overheard a portion of a chat last week. She remembered what he said. I know, but I can't keep doing this forever, and she doesn't suspect anything, but the guilt is killing me. Maris confronted him on it that night. He broke down and said that he had been sending money to Molly. Not just recently. For years. Molly apparently contacted him shortly after Karen's birth, alleging she was struggling financially and that Dad was not providing adequate support. My brother, feeling bad for first rejecting Karen, began sending her money on a monthly basis. Small quantities at initially, then gradually increased as Molly's demands grew. The actual kicker? Molly had been telling him that Dad was unaware of the payments and that they needed to remain hidden because Dad was already doing so much. She portrayed herself as a struggling single mother who was too proud to seek for extra assistance from Dad. My brother ate it up, most likely because it helped him feel like a good brother without having to have a relationship with Karen. But this is where the plot takes a dramatic left turn. Maris dug through my brother's bank transactions and discovered that he had sent Molly more than $15,000 in the previous 3 years. $15,000, money that should have been spent on their home, wedding, and baby preparations. Maris was furious, but my brother asked her not to say anything because he was trying to fix the situation. That's why he's been so desperate to get Karen to move elsewhere. Molly had threatened to inform Dad about the money if the installments stopped. She said she'd tell Dad that my brother had been privately supporting his daughter for years while publicly rejecting her, making him look like a huge hypocrite. My brother got caught up in this blackmail scheme, and his answer was to get me to accept Karen so that the pressure would be lifted off him. Anna came home with all of this knowledge, and I honestly had no idea what to do with it. Part of me felt vindicated. I sensed something was wrong with my brother's abrupt change of heart. But largely I felt sick. For years the entire family has lied to and manipulated one another. I chose to call Maris directly. She was afraid to speak at first, But eventually everything came out. She's considered leaving my brother over this. Not just the money, though that was horrible enough, but the lies, the manipulation, and the way he has made her feel guilty for preserving her mental health. She said she didn't even remember who she married anymore. That conversation altered everything for me. I saw my brother wasn't simply being manipulative with Karen. He had been lying for years, just like his father. The apple doesn't fall far from its tree. I told Maris she deserved more and that nothing was her fault. I also informed her that if she ever needed a place to stay while she straightened things out, my couch was open. Not for Karen or my brother, but for her and the baby if they required an escape. She burst into tears and said how she had felt alienated, as if everyone in the family was against her for not bringing Karen in. Knowing the reality about why my brother was so persistent made her feel less insane, but also more hurt. What is the strangest part? She asked if I thought she should inform Dad about the money. I told her it was her decision, but Dad was probably already aware. Call it intuition, but the entire thing reeks of secrets inside secrets. 2 days later, Dad showed up at my door again. But this time, he appeared defeated rather than enraged. He sat down firmly on my couch and stated, "We need to talk about your brother." It turns out I was correct. Dad had known about the payments for several months. He discovered them by mistake, when my brother sent a payment confirmation email to Dad's address rather than his own. Apparently their email addresses are similar, and it was an autofill error. Dad approached Molly, who broke down and revealed she had been influencing my brother for many years. But here's the bit that made me want to scream. Dad had been allowing it to continue since it put less strain on him to support Molly and Karen. He was essentially allowing my brother to subsidize his mistake while presenting himself as the good man attempting to bring the family together. The web of falsehoods and deception is so complex that just thinking about it makes me dizzy. Dad is leveraging my brother's guilt to dodge his own obligations. My brother is using manipulation to try to force me to solve his blackmail problem. Molly uses everyone else's guilt to pay her lifestyle. Mom is most likely having breakdowns because she perceives all of the falsehoods, even if she is unaware of the specifics. And me? I appear to be the only one who has been open about not wanting to be a part of this disaster, which somehow makes me the villain. Dad asked if I would consider taking Karen now that I understood the whole truth. I laughed, really laughed, and told him that learning about even more layers of falsehoods and manipulation didn't make me any more willing to participate. That's when he dropped the ultimate bombshell. He and Mom are thinking about divorce. Mom discovered that he knew about the payments and feels betrayed all over again. She has been staying at her sister's place for the previous week, so my brother's marriage is crumbling. My parents are about to divorce. Molly is undoubtedly worried about her money source running out, and Karen is still caught in the center of all this adult dysfunction. And I'm still the terrible guy for wanting to keep out of the situation. I don't know how to feel anymore. Part of me wants to tell everyone to figure it out for themselves and block all of their numbers. But another part of me, probably the one taught by years of family guilt, wonders if I should try to help in some way. Anna believes I should keep far away from all of them. She's undoubtedly correct, but it's difficult to watch your entire family crumble, especially when you know they brought it on themselves. I suppose we'll see what happens next. I filmed my brother hurting his girlfriend and got him jailed. My parents kicked me out, saying I betrayed family and ruined his future. My name is Eric and I'm 18. This happened 3 months ago, yet I'm still struggling with the aftermath. I need guidance on whether I did the right thing, because everyone says I ruined my family. My 21-year-old brother Liam has always been the center of attention in our family. He plays college baseball and has a partial scholarship at State University. My parents treat him as if he can do no wrong. Growing up, Liam would smash my belongings and bully me around, and my parents would always make excuses for him. They claimed he was simply being competitive, or that I was being overly sensitive. When I was 14, Liam threw a baseball at my head during practice in our backyard. I ended up with a concussion and missed a week of school. My parents told everyone I had fallen off my bike. They warned it would harm Liam's prospects of being scouted if people suspected he had rage issues. I quickly realized that remaining quiet was simpler than fighting them. Liam began dating Samantha, a 19-year-old female, approximately 2 years ago. She's quiet and always appeared frightened around him. At family dinners she seldom spoke and flinched if he moved too fast. My parents adored her because she never questioned what Liam did. They would make jokes about how well-trained she was and Liam's ability to pick them. The incident that changed everything occurred on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I arrived home early from my part-time work at the grocery shop because I had a splitting headache. I worked there after school to save money for community college, as my parents stated that they would only pay for Liam's education. I arrived into our house and heard shouting from upstairs. Liam screamed at someone, and I heard a girl weep. I walked upstairs to see what was going on. The door to Liam's room was slightly open, allowing me to look inside. Liam had Samantha pinned against a wall. His hand was wrapped around her throat, and her feet were barely on the ground. She tried to say something, but she could scarcely breathe. Her face was going red. Liam was complaining about how she embarrassed him at a party the night before by talking to other guys. I remained there for almost 10 seconds, trying to grasp what I saw. Then I pulled out my phone and began recording. I recorded for around 30 seconds before Liam heard me. Samantha gasped as she plummeted to the floor after being dropped. Liam noticed me holding my phone and ran for the door, but I was already running downstairs. I locked myself in the bathroom and quickly dialed 911. I told them everything I observed and that I had captured it on camera. The dispatcher kept me on the line until the cops came about 15 minutes later. Liam was detained in the afternoon. Samantha was transported to the hospital to be examined. My parents arrived home while the cops were still present, and they immediately began defending Liam. They informed the authorities that Samantha was emotional and Liam would never harm anyone. They offered that perhaps I misread what I saw. The cops confiscated my phone and copied the footage. Liam was charged with domestic assault and released on bail the next morning. My parents paid the $5,000 bail with little hesitation. The morning after Liam left, I awoke to discover all of my possessions in garbage bags on the front porch. My mother was standing there, arms crossed. She informed me that I had betrayed my family and damaged Liam's future. She told me I was no longer welcome at their place. My father came out and told him I was dead. They claimed Liam committed one mistake, and I chose to wreck his life instead of dealing with it privately. I tried to convey that what I observed was not a mistake, but an assault. Samantha, according to my mother, was most likely exaggerating what happened, and females like her were often trying to trap affluent guys. She stated I was ignorant and would understand as I got older. I had nowhere to go. I called my 18-year-old pal Tom, but his parents declined to become involved in family trouble. I spent the first night sleeping in my car in the parking lot of the grocery store where I worked. Samantha called me the next day. She had obtained my phone number from Liam's before the police confiscated it. She was residing with her older sister, Maria, 25 female, and wanted to thank me for calling the police. She claimed Liam's condition had deteriorated over the last few months, but she was too terrified to inform anyone. Maria met me up at the parking lot and drove me to their apartment. She works as a paralegal and is familiar with legal issues. She stated I did the right thing and possibly saved Samantha's life. Maria allowed me to sleep on their couch. Samantha showed me texts Liam had sent her after his release on bail. He threatened to post private images of her online if she did not withdraw the allegations. He promised to make sure everyone at school understood what kind of person she truly was. The messages worsened with each passing day. Maria copied all of the messages and told us we needed to give them to the police. She also stated that the video I captured would be essential proof. Samantha had previously been too afraid to speak out about Liam's actions, although she did admit to prior instances in which he became physically aggressive with her. My parents called me thousands of times, but I did not answer. Finally, my father left a voicemail stating that they would give me one chance to return home if I accepted my mistake and deleted the video. He claimed they'd forgive me if I helped to resolve this matter. The voicemail sounded like something my mother had written. I never reacted to the voicemail or any of their subsequent attempts to reach me. Maria assisted me in changing my phone number after Liam began sending me threatening messages too. He told me I had no idea what I was getting into and that I would regret turning against my family. The legal process progressed slowly. Liam hired an expensive lawyer who repeatedly tried to have the charges reduced. The prosecutor was preparing a case and wanted to interrogate me again about what I had witnessed. Samantha was debating whether to testify because Liam's lawyer made it appear that she had invited the assault. I had to drop out of high school for a few weeks because I didn't have anywhere stable to reside and couldn't complete my studies. The school counselor called my parents to check on me, but they informed her I had moved out of choice and was acting dramatically. They didn't say that I was kicked out. Maria's flat was small, and I knew I couldn't stay there indefinitely. Samantha was having nightmares and panic attacks, and my presence was a continual reminder of what had transpired. I began looking into other choices, but I had no money saved and no family support. I petitioned for emancipation through the legal system so that I might receive help for homeless youth. The process was difficult, and I needed to establish that my parents had abandoned me. I gave copies of the voicemail and text messages in which they disowned me. Liam violated the restraining order 3 weeks after his initial arrest by showing up to Samantha's job. He waited in the parking lot until she finished her shift at the restaurant, where she works part-time. A co-worker witnessed him grab Samantha's arm and attempt to pull her into his car. Liam was apprehended once more. This time his bail was cancelled, and he was forced to remain in jail until trial. My parents spent their savings account in an attempt to get him out, but the judge refused. They also blamed me for this, claiming that if I hadn't documented the original incident, none of this would have occurred. The prosecutor phoned me and stated that Liam's case had become significantly stronger as a result of the bail violation. They wanted me to testify about what I saw in the initial assault. I volunteered to testify because I knew Samantha needed someone to verify her account. My parents hired a private investigator to follow me around and record where I was staying. They were attempting to claim I was living in unstable conditions so that they could use it against me in court. The PI photographed me on my way to Maria's apartment and then to work. I haven't spoken to my parents or Liam since the day I was kicked out. My younger sister, Emma, 16 female, attempted to contact me once through a friend, but when I phoned her back, she cried and hung up. I later discovered that my parents had told her that I was a traitor who preferred strangers above family. The hardest part was recognizing that my parents would never back me if it meant going up against Liam. They taught me throughout my youth that family loyalty entailed always looking out for one another. However, when I asked them to choose between right and wrong, they selected Liam without hesitation. I'm currently enrolled in a temporary housing program for young adults. It isn't ideal, but it's secure and reliable. I'm working on earning my GED after missing so much school. Samantha and Maria have become like family to me, which is surprising given how little I knew them before all of this happened. The trial is scheduled to begin next month. The prosecutor claims they have a solid case due to the video evidence and bail breach. Samantha has opted to testify, and numerous other females have come forward with accounts of Liam's actions. Apparently this was not his first violent encounter with a lover. I know I did the right thing by calling the police, but I had no idea it would cost me my entire family. My parents claim I ruined their lives, but I simply reported a crime I witnessed. I kept wondering whether there was another way to handle it without tearing everything apart. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't arrived home early that day, or if I had simply ignored what I saw. Liam would still be free, and I would still have a family, but Samantha would be dead, and that is something I cannot accept. I'm posting this because I want to know from strangers if what I accomplished was worthwhile. Everyone in my life now agrees that I did the right thing, but they did not lose their family as a result. My parents have made it clear that I will never be welcomed back, and at the age of 18, I'm attempting to find out how to start a new life. Update 1. Liam was found guilty of all charges at the conclusion of his trial last week. He was sentenced to 18 months in jail and 3 years probation. The judge stated that video footage was critical in demonstrating the assault beyond reasonable doubt. Samantha testified for 2 days and did well, despite Liam's lawyer's attempts to make her appear to be lying. But that's not the most important news. Something came out throughout the trial that I had no idea about. During the prosecution's case, they called an unexpected witness. My cousin Ryan, 23, who is my father's nephew and lives approximately an hour distant from us. I always assumed he didn't enjoy seeing our family because he rarely came around on holidays. Ryan said that while he was in high school, he attempted to inform my parents that Liam had attacked him at a family cookout. This happened when I was about 12, so I don't recall it well. Ryan claimed Liam struck him in the stomach after losing a card game, then threatened to injure him far more if he told anybody else. When Ryan told his parents what had transpired, they faced my mother and father. My parents disputed it, claiming Ryan was lying because he was jealous of Liam's athletic accomplishments. They barred Ryan from family gatherings and informed the entire extended family that he was fabricating stories to get Liam in trouble. Ryan's testimony clarified why Liam appeared to believe he could get away with violence. My parents have been covering for him and disregarding his victims for many years. They established a pattern in which Liam learnt that his acts would have no consequences as long as they controlled the story. The prosecutor also produced evidence that my parents had paid Liam's lawyer with money from my education fund. I had been saving birthday and Christmas money in that account since I was a child, and they closed it without telling me. When I found out, I wasn't surprised, but it reaffirmed that they had never intended to sponsor my schooling. Following the sentencing, my father met me outside the courthouse. He appeared to have aged 10 years in the last few months. He said the family had been destroyed and asked if I was satisfied with my achievements. He claimed Liam's life had been damaged and that I would be burdened with that obligation indefinitely. I informed him that Liam had damaged his own life by assaulting Samantha and violating his bond. My father told me that I was too young to comprehend how the real world operated and that we should have handled this quietly. He left without saying goodbye. My mother did not speak to me during the trial, but she scowled at me every time I entered the courtroom. On the day of sentence, she delivered a victim impact statement in which she expressed how much anguish this had caused their family. She said I had been duped by outside forces, and that the true victim was Liam, who was simply attempting to punish his girlfriend. When my mother finished speaking, the judge appeared disgusted. He stated that domestic abuse was never acceptable and that the court had received sufficient information to establish that this was not an isolated incident. 3 days after the sentence, my sister Emma reached me via a friend's social media account. She asked to meet me at a coffee shop near our high school. I was afraid to visit her because I hadn't spoken to a single family member since the day they kicked me out. Emma appeared fatigued when I saw her. She'd lost weight and developed black circles beneath her eyes. She claimed living at home had become terrible after Liam's incarceration. My parents are continuously fighting and blaming each other for how they handled the problem. Every night, my mother drinks alcohol and laments about how her boys abandoned her. My father works additional hours to avoid being at home. Emma claimed she knew I was correct to contact the cops since she had witnessed Liam hurt Samantha before. Liam grabbed Samantha's wrist so forcefully at a family dinner last year that she ended up with bruises when she reached for something without asking him. Emma noticed the marks later, while Samantha was working in the kitchen, but Samantha begged her not to say anything. Emma also informed me that Liam had been abusive with her. Nothing as bad as what he did to Samantha, but he would twist her arm or push her while my parents weren't watching. He always threatened her thereafter, claiming that no one would believe her if she complained. Emma stated that she was terrified of him but did not know how to tell anyone. Emma found the chat tough since she was divided between loyalty to our parents and knowing I had done the right thing. She claimed that my parents had barred her from contacting me and that she would be in trouble if they found out about our meeting. She also claimed that they had informed all of our relatives that I was doing drugs and had mental health issues, which is why I had turned against the family. Emma gave me some of my possessions that my parents had retained after they kicked me out. She had concealed them in her chamber before our parents could dispose of them. There were some photographs, books, and a watch that my grandfather had given me before his death. Seeing such things made me understand how much my parents had tried to exclude me from their lives. Emma mentioned before she left that she was counting down the days until she could graduate and leave home. She stated living with our parents alone was suffocating, and they watched everything she did because they were afraid of losing another kid. She wasn't permitted to invite people over or travel away without a lengthy explanation of where she would be. After meeting Emma, I recognized that my parents' concept of family devotion was a kind of control and cruelty. They had taught all of us to remain silent about Liam's actions. When I finally broke the quiet, they interpreted it as the ultimate betrayal. Samantha also told me that more girls from Liam's high school and college contacted the prosecutor after hearing about the trial. Liam had a reputation for being harsh with girlfriends, but no one had ever reported him because his family was well known in the neighborhood. The prosecution informed me that if I hadn't documented the assault and alerted the cops, Liam would have likely progressed to more severe violence. Samantha stated she had planned to end her relationship with him the week after I witnessed the assault, and she believes he would have hurt her seriously if she had tried to leave. I'm still living in transitional housing and studying for my GED. The program I'm in assists young adults who have been booted out or abandoned by their parents. I've met other people with similar situations, which has helped me realize that my position is not unique. Maria assisted me in applying for college financial aid as an independent student, as my parents are plainly not going to fund my education. The procedure is difficult, but if all goes well, I should be able to join community college next September. Samantha is feeling better now that Liam is in jail. She began counseling through a victim services program and is considering transferring to another school next year to seek a fresh start. She and Maria both stated I could contact them once I moved out of temporary housing. The strangest aspect of this is that I feel more stable today than I did when I lived with my parents. Even though I lost my family and had to start over from scratch, I don't have to tiptoe on eggshells or pretend Liam's behavior was typical. I do not have to cover up abuse or justify violence. My parents chose to protect Liam above his victims. I made my decision when I realized that doing the right thing was more essential than keeping my family together. Despite the fact that I lost everything I thought I knew about my family, I still believe I made the correct decision. Update 2. Liam was released from jail 2 weeks ago on work release, which means he can work during the day, but must return to spend the remainder of his term at night. His probation officer contacted me to inform me of his release date and to see if I felt comfortable. I told them I wasn't concerned because Liam had shown no interest in contacting me after the trial. I was mistaken about that. Liam showed up last Tuesday at the grocery shop where I work. I was stocking shelves in the produce section when I noticed him stroll in about 3 p.m. He was dressed for the construction job he had gotten as part of his release program. I immediately proceeded to see my manager and informed him of the restraining order. My manager contacted the cops, but Liam reached me before they came. He stood around 10 feet away, which was theoretically outside the restraining order distance, and began talking. He said he needed to tell me something vital concerning our parents that concerned Emma's safety. Liam claimed our parents had lied to everyone about why they kicked me out. According to him, they informed relatives and family acquaintances that I had stolen money from them and that I was doing drugs. They claimed they tried to help me but had to remove me from the house to protect Emma from my negative influence. He also claimed that our father had been drinking heavily since the trial and had gone into debt attempting to pay legal bills. Our mother was working 2 jobs to pay the mortgage, and they were thinking about selling the home. Liam stated that they blamed me for damaging the family's reputation in the neighborhood. The police arrived as Liam was speaking. They examined his work release documents and established that he was supposed to be at his working site, not my workplace. The officer informed Liam that his presence violated the terms of his release and that he must leave immediately. Liam mentioned something else before the police escorted him out that I'm still thinking about. He claimed Emma had been questioning our parents about what truly happened with Samantha and the assault. According to Liam, Emma had been defending me and expressing her want to contact me again. Our parents had threatened to send her to live with our aunt in another state if she continued to bring up my name. After Liam left, I called Maria to tell her what had happened. She advised me to report the contact to both the police and Liam's probation officer, as showing up at my workplace may be deemed harassment. She also urged that I find a method to contact Emma and make sure she was okay. The following day, Liam's probation officer called to inform me that his work release had been terminated due to the incident at my job. Liam was back in jail, serving the balance of his sentence. According to the officer, Liam stated he was delivering an important family message, but any communication with me was prohibited for any reason. 2 days later, Emma called me. She was using a friend's phone because her parents had confiscated her cell phone as punishment for something. She sounded worried and stated that she needed to see me straight away. We decided to meet at the same coffee shop where we had met previously. Emma appeared worse than the previous time I saw her. Her long sleeves helped to conceal a bruise on her upper arm. When I asked her about it, she explained that our father had grabbed her during an argument about me. She stated that the atmosphere at home had deteriorated significantly since Liam returned to jail. Emma informed me that our parents had been asking her about whether she had been in contact with me. They accused her of sneaking around and deceiving them. When she admitted to seeing me once, our father lost his cool and grabbed her arm, ranting about family devotion and betrayal. Our mother had supported our father's actions by stating that Emma needed to understand that her decisions had repercussions. Emma claimed they were treating her like she was a potential traitor who needed to be continuously monitored. They had also canceled her intentions to attend a summer program at a community college because they did not trust her to be away from them. The worst part was what Emma told me about the night Liam broke his bond and attempted to grab Samantha in the parking lot. Emma explained that our parents knew Liam was going to approach Samantha since he called them from jail for advice. They instructed him to try to reason with her and persuade her to dismiss the charges. Emma overheard our mother tell our father that if Liam could just talk to Samantha quietly, he would be able to straighten things out. They knew he wasn't supposed to contact her, but they assumed the restraining order was a formality that could be bypassed if Liam was careful. This meant that our parents had practically encouraged Liam to breach his bail conditions, resulting in him being detained again and losing his chance to remain out of jail during the trial. They destroyed his own legal case because they refused to acknowledge that he had to follow the rules. Emma also informed me that our parents had been contacting Samantha's family, attempting to persuade them to pressure Samantha into revising her testimony. They left voicemails for Samantha's mother, stating that the trial was hurting 2 families and that Samantha should consider the wider picture. Samantha's family had to change their phone number to avoid harassment. After hearing all of this, I concluded that my parents would never cease attempting to control the situation. Even after Liam was convicted and jailed, they continued to try to control the narrative and blame others for the repercussions of his conduct. I told Emma that she needs to document the bruise on her arm and any other instances where our parents got physical with her. I also gave her my new phone number and told her she may call me if she felt unsafe. Emma expressed concern that contacting me might exacerbate the situation at home, but she also stated that she couldn't continue to pretend that our parents were wonderful people. Emma asked whether I thought she should report what our father had done to her arm. I told her that was her decision, but she deserved to feel comfortable in her own house. I also told her that what our father did was unacceptable, even if our parents attempted to rationalize it as discipline. Emma handed me a letter that had been mailed to our house and was addressed to me. It came from our grandmother on our mother's side. She lives in Florida and rarely communicates with our family, but she had seen information about Liam's trial online. In the letter, she stated that she was proud of me for doing the right thing, but that she had never trusted Liam because he reminded her of our grandfather, who had abused our grandmother when our mother was younger. Our grandmother's letter revealed a lot about why our mother was so determined to safeguard Liam. Apparently, our mother grew up hearing our grandma justify our grandfather's aggressive behavior. Our mother had learned that keeping the family together was more essential than dealing with abuse, and she was following the same pattern with Liam. The letter included a $500 check and our grandmother's phone number. She wrote that she hoped she could help me more, but her health prevented her from traveling. She explained that our mother had always chosen to protect the wrong people, and that she was sorry I had to pay the price for telling the truth. Reading our grandmother's letter made me realize that my family's difficulties extended deeper than Liam's actions. Our parents had been formed by their own experiences with abuse and cover-ups, and they had never learned healthier dispute resolution strategies. I'm still in transitional housing, but I'll be moving into my own apartment next month as part of a program for young adults aging out of the system. I'll be starting community college in the fall and working part-time to help support myself. It's not the life I had envisioned when I lived with my parents, but it's one I created by making my own decisions rather than following their instructions. Samantha is doing well and has decided to attend a school in another state for her senior year. She wants to leave the village, where everyone knows about the trial. Maria was promoted at her law company and has been assisting other victims of domestic violence navigate the judicial system. I had not heard personally from my parents since the day my father confronted me outside the courts. According to Emma, they still talk about me as if I were dead. They've informed folks that they only have 2 children and know no one named Eric. Final update. Emma fled her home 3 weeks ago. She's residing with our grandmother in Florida since our parents passed a limit that Emma couldn't ignore. It all began when Emma's high school guidance counselor called our parents to discuss Emma's college applications. Emma was worried and distant, and her grades were falling. During the appointment, the counselor asked Emma discreetly if everything was all right at home. Emma broke down and told the counselor about the injuries, the constant monitoring, and the threats of being kicked out if she uttered my name. The counselor was compelled to report any suspected abuse, so she phoned Child Protective Services. When CPS arrived to our home 2 days later, our parents were enraged. They accused Emma of lying and fabricating stories to gain attention. Our father claimed that Emma had been influenced by me and was attempting to destroy the family in the same way that I had done. Our mother explained that Emma was being dramatic and that typical family correction was not abuse. The CPS agent examined Emma at school and documented the fading mark on her arm. Emma also showed them text conversations in which our mother threatened to send her to boarding school if she continued to raise questions about me. The worker informed Emma that she had options if she did not feel comfortable at home. That night, our parents confronted Emma about speaking to CPS. According to Emma, our father screamed at her for hours about family devotion and how she, like me, had betrayed them. Our mother claimed they had given up everything for their children and that Emma was being ungrateful and selfish. The argument heated up when Emma stated that she wanted to contact me and that she did not believe I had done anything wrong. Our father grabbed Emma by the shoulders and shook her, saying that I was dead to the family and that she should forget I existed. Emma threatened to call CPS again, and our father told her she could pack her bags and leave if she didn't like how they managed their home. Emma called our grandmother at night. Our grandma promptly purchased Emma's plane ticket to Florida and instructed her to depart the house the following morning when our parents were at work. Emma packed one suitcase and wrote a note stating that she would live with our grandmother until she was 18. When our parents found the note, they called our grandma and requested that she return Emma. Our grandma informed them that Emma was welcome to stay for as long as she wanted and that she had seen enough of their parenting techniques. She stated that if they tried to compel Emma to return, she would hire a lawyer to assist Emma become legally emancipated. Our parents drove to Florida the following weekend to persuade Emma to return home. Emma declined to see them. Our grandmother informed them that Emma was terrified of them and that they had lost the right to call themselves her parents since they chose to protect Liam over their children. Emma contacted me from our grandmother's place and told me all of this. She sounded different than the previous time we spoke, less terrified and more determined. She stated, "Living with our grandmother was like stepping into a different world where people didn't have to walk on eggshells or make excuses for abuse." Emma informed me that our grandmother had been estranged from our mother for years due to disagreements over how our mother handled Liam's behavior. Our grandmother had recognized the warning signs early on and tried to persuade our parents to seek professional help for Liam, but they dismissed her concerns as interference. When Liam was in high school, our grandmother volunteered to help pay for family counseling, but our parents declined because they believed there was nothing wrong with her family that others could comprehend. Our grandmother recognized then that our parents would support Liam no matter what he did. Emma stated that our grandmother apologized for not doing enough to help us when we were younger. She had attempted to establish a relationship with our mother but eventually gave up because our parents refused to recognize that Liam was a problem. Our grandma regretted not being more present in our lives. 3 days after our parents' unsuccessful vacation to Florida, I received a call from our mother. It was the first time she had contacted me directly since the day I was kicked out. She sounded tired and desperate. She stated the family was falling apart and begged if I would come home to assist, persuade Emma to return. Our mother stated that she and our father acknowledged they had made mistakes in how they handled things. She claimed they were eager to talk about Liam and recognize he had problems. She promised that things would change if I returned and that we could work together to repair the family. I informed our mother that I was not interested in returning and that Emma had made her own decision about where she wanted to live. I told them that if parents wanted to re-establish ties with their children, they needed to start by accepting responsibility for their actions rather than expecting us to address the problems they had caused. Our mother burst into tears, saying she couldn't understand how everything had gone wrong. She stated that all she had ever wanted was to keep the family together and protect her children. I informed her that shielding one child while allowing him to harm others was killing the family from within. The conversation ended when our mother stated that she couldn't accept Liam as the villain in this case. She insisted that there had to be another explanation that did not portray her and our father as horrible parents. I recognized at that point that she was still unwilling to face the reality about Liam's actions, or their role in covering it up. Emma and I communicate on the phone every few days. She is starting her final year of high school in Florida and has been admitted to numerous institutions. Our granny is helping her apply for financial aid and scholarships. Emma stated that she feels like she can breathe again and wishes she had left sooner. Liam is set to be freed from jail next month and serve the remainder of his term on probation. His probation officer phoned me and asked whether I wanted to be advised of his release date and location. I stated that I was not concerned about Liam, but I did want to know if he violated his probation again. Samantha graduated from college last month and was accepted into graduate school in another state. She's leaving this summer to start over somewhere Liam and my family cannot find her. She claimed that the trial and everything that followed taught her that she was stronger than she realized and that she deserved better than Liam was providing her. I moved to my own apartment 6 weeks ago. It's little and the neighborhood isn't particularly appealing, but it's mine, and no one can kick me out for doing the right thing. I work full-time at a warehouse and attend school part-time at a community college. My plan is to transfer to a 4-year institution next year and study social work. The most shocking aspect of starting a life away from my family is how tranquil it is. I don't have to be concerned about Liam's moods or my parents' justifications. I don't have to help cover up abuse or pretend that violence is acceptable. I can make judgments based on what I believe are right, rather than what keeps the family together. My parents have made it obvious that they regard both Emma and myself as traitors who abandoned the family. They've told relatives that they created ungrateful children who turned on them when they needed it the most. They refuse to admit that their choices had caused the predicament. Some people believe I should try to reconcile with my parents, or give them another chance to make things right. However, I've discovered that some people are so determined to their interpretation of reality, that they refuse to change, even if it means losing their children. My parents selected Liam over the rest of the family, and they continue to do so. Emma and I are developing a bond with our grandma, which our parents sought to prevent. We are learning about aspects of our family history that our parents have kept concealed. We are also learning that family connections can be built on respect and honesty rather than fear and control. I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't called the cops that day. Liam would likely still be free to harm Samantha and other women. Emma would probably still be stuck in that house, afraid to speak out against mistreatment. I might still be part of a system that protects perpetrators while silencing victims. I lost the family I thought I had when I called the cops on Liam, but it helped me find the family I really wanted. Emma is safe now. Samantha is creating a new life, and I'm learning to trust my own instincts rather than following someone else's rules about devotion and silence. I have no regrets about the decision I took. I would make the same decision again if I had to. Because some things are more essential than keeping a dysfunctional family intact. Doing the right thing sometimes entails admitting that you will have to start over, but that new life can be better than the one you abandoned. Now, let us go to the following narrative. Story 2. My cousin's daughter pretended to be in need of housing assistance in order to gain access to my son, then attempted to take his inheritance and my business. Now, my entire family thinks I'm wrong for filing accusations. I, 45, have been raising my 20-year-old son Richard by myself since my spouse died in a car accident 15 years ago. We've lived a quite average existence. I own a bakery that my husband and I established when we were 25, and Richard has grown up working there. The bakery is nothing special, just a modest store in a shopping mall, but it does well enough to support us and save some money for Richard's education. My husband left us some life insurance money, which I put in Richard's future. We've never been affluent, but we've always been comfortable. Richard is a good child. He studies hard and works at the bakery on weekends, and we've always been close. After his father died, we began the custom of Sunday movie nights. Richard would make time for such movie nights, even as he approached his adolescence. My Aunt Helen was a great assistance after my husband died. Helen is my mother's younger sister, and because my mother resides in another state, she has served as Richard's grandma figure. She would watch him after school when I had to work late at the bakery, and she even gave me a loan once when our oven broke down and needed to be replaced. Monica, her 25-year-old daughter, was 10 when I first started babysitting her on occasion. Helen was also a single mom, so we helped each other out over the years. Monica was always a little different from other youngsters. She was extremely intelligent, but also manipulative. I recall when she was 12, she persuaded one of her classmates to exchange her new bike for Monica's old video game console. The girl's parents were furious when they found out, but Monica had gotten the girl to write a note claiming it was a fair trade, so they couldn't do much about it. Helen often shrugged it off, claiming Monica was simply clever with people. We didn't see much of Monica as a teenager. She went to college in another state and only attended family gatherings on occasion. She last spent any substantial time with us during Helen's 60th birthday party 5 years ago. Richard was 15 at the time, and Monica, who was 20, spent a lot of time with him discussing college and his future plans. I thought it was good that she was showing interest in her younger relative. Monica called 3 months ago to tell me she had acquired a marketing position with a firm in our city. She needed a place to stay while looking for an apartment, and as we had a spare room, I invited her to stay with us. I believed it was a way to repay Helen's generosity throughout the years. The first month was excellent. Monica helped around the house, expressed interest in the bakery, and would frequently stay late to assist me with paperwork and inventory. She explained that her profession allowed her to work flexible hours, so she would sometimes be home throughout the day. I did not question it because many organizations now have remote work practices. In retrospect, there were warning indications. Monica was always present whenever Richard was home. If he was studying in the living room, she would also work there. If he was at the bakery assisting me, she would arrive with coffee or snacks. She began volunteering to assist him study for his business classes, claiming that her marketing knowledge would be beneficial. Richard began acting differently approximately 2 months after Monica moved in. He started keeping his phone face down and leaving the room to text. He skipped 2 consecutive Sunday movie nights, citing a lack of time due to studies. That was not like him at all. Even during finals week, he'd make time for movie nights. Everything came out last week when Richard texted me a recipe that needed checking. I checked his messages and saw dozens of texts between him and Monica. They had been covertly dating for nearly 2 months. The messages indicate that Monica had planned the entire incident. She hadn't only moved here for a job. She had relocated here solely to pursue Richard. She'd been watching all of his social media sites for months before approaching me about living with us. The marketing job was all made up. She'd stopped her regular work and was living on savings while attempting to get closer to Richard. She instructed him not to inform me about their relationship because she thought I was overprotective and would react badly if I found out. When I confronted Monica, she made no attempt to refute anything. She claimed she formed feelings for Richard at Helen's birthday party 5 years ago. She had been waiting for him to be old enough so that it would not appear indecent. She said there was nothing wrong with what she did because they were both adults now. The way she mentioned waiting for Richard to be old enough disturbed me. She'd practically been watching him grow up, intending to date him the entire time. She utilized my gratitude to Helen and our familial connection to get close to him. The entire situation felt intentional and wrong. Richard was perplexed when I showed him how long Monica had been planning this. She had convinced him that their relationship had grown organically as a result of their time together. He had no idea she had been stalking him online or that she had moved here just for him. He felt keeping their connection private was only temporary until they worked out how to tell me without making things awkward. I told Monica that she needed to leave my house. That's when she became angry and revealed her true personality. She claimed she had acquired residency, and I could not legally evict her without appropriate notice. She threatened to inform Helen that I was sending her out on the street after everything Helen had done for us. She also indicated that I was jealous because Richard was focused on someone else rather than me. I issued her a written 30-day notice to quit, but by then she had already called Helen. Now, my entire family is involved. Helen calls me every day, weeping about how I am being unkind to her daughter. She claims Monica has always struggled to connect with people her own age, but she has now found someone who understands her. She constantly bringing up how she supported us when my husband died, suggesting I owe her family more consideration. Other relatives have also taken sides. My cousin Mark believes I'm overreacting because Richard and Monica aren't blood related. My sister believes I'm being overprotective about the age gap. My uncle Bill says I should be delighted Richard found someone from our family rather than a stranger. Richard is receiving letters from family members encouraging him to stand up for himself and his relationship with Sarah. Some of them bring up Helen's role in raising him, implying that we both owe her family more allegiance. Some relatives even said that my reaction indicates that I have pathological attachment issues with Richard and should let him grow up. I will not back down on this. Monica tricked her way into our home and attempted to surreptitiously date my son. She lied about having a job, about why she relocated here, and even encouraged Richard to lie to me. That is not the type of person I want him to be engaged with, regardless of family connections. Update 1. Things have become significantly worse since my last update. Monica moved out yesterday, but the last 2 weeks have been dreadful. She began telling family people that she and Richard had been sleeping together since she moved in, saying that I was attempting to separate them because I couldn't tolerate Richard having another woman in his life. When Helen reiterated these accusations to me, Richard became enraged and showed me all of their communications to verify that nothing physical had ever occurred. Their connection had primarily consisted of messaging and a few discreet rendezvous for coffee or lunch. The communications showed Monica consistently pressing for more, while Richard was hesitant to go too quickly and hide secrets from me. After Monica moved out, I discovered proof that made everything much more serious. I discovered a notebook in the guest room that included extensive financial information. She had jotted down our bank account numbers, information on the bakery's earnings, and, most worrying, exact facts regarding Richard's inheritance from his father. When she stayed late to help with paperwork, the bakery's surveillance camera captured her looking through my office files. She had been photographing documents and logging into our computer system with my password, which she had apparently remembered while watching me work. She had copied information on our suppliers, costs, and daily sales numbers. I also discovered a spreadsheet on the laptop she forgot to take with her when she moved out. It had a planned plan to persuade Richard to use his inheritance money to build a competitive bakery. She had researched nearby locations, calculated startup costs using information from my suppliers, and even created company financing applications based on our financial data. When I investigated her laptop's internet history, I discovered she had been investigating how inheritance money is handled in marriages and dividing assets after divorce. She had also looked into moving business ownership among family members and forced buyouts of family enterprises. Looking through Richard's phone indicated that she had been working on his psychology. She would casually imply that his business lessons had made him more competent to run a bakery than me. She remarked that working for his mother indefinitely was not ambitious enough for someone with his talent. She had been attempting to divide us by making comments about how I was using the bakery to exert control over his life. When I told Helen what we had discovered, she continued to defend Monica. She said that Monica was simply being thorough in planning a future with Richard, and that inquiring into family money was fair if they were getting married. She accused me of invading Monica's privacy by peeking at her laptop, and she said that I was painting Monica as a criminal in order to prevent Richard from becoming independent. The family is currently divided into 3 parts. Some people are appalled by Monica's conduct and have apologized for doubting me. Others believe I'm exaggerating things to damage Monica's reputation because I don't want Richard to grow up. Several people, including Helen, continue to defend Monica and claim she did nothing wrong. My sister, who first backed Monica, now recognizes that the situation appears predatory, but believes I should handle it quietly to prevent harming Monica's reputation. She claims Monica is young and has made errors, but she does not deserve to have her life ruined because of this. She continues bringing up how this could influence Helen's status within the family. Update 2. The matter has escalated beyond ordinary family drama. Richard received a call yesterday from our bank regarding a business loan application completed in his name. Monica had forged his signature on loan applications using the personal information she had obtained while living with us. She made a false email address purporting to be Richard and had been communicating with the bank about the loan for weeks. We filed a police report, which revealed much more truth. This wasn't Monica's first effort at fraud. At her prior job, she was fired for attempting to open credit cards using her co-workers' personal information. Her prior employer agreed not to press charges as long as she went quietly, so we never found out about it. According to the police investigation, Monica owed approximately $50,000 in gaming debt to online casinos. She'd maxed up 6 credit cards and gotten loans from several family members. She informed my Aunt Carol that she needed $10,000 for emergency cancer treatment. She persuaded my cousin Pete to lend her $15,000 for a fraudulent IT startup. The worst thing was that she had persuaded Helen to take out a second mortgage on her home, claiming she was being blackmailed for certain images. Monica, according to the detective, constructed a bogus internet account years ago in order to learn about Richard's hobbies. She utilized this information to pretend they shared everything. She had researched his social media posts regarding movies, music, and books, and then casually brought up these same topics when speaking with him. She had even begun watching all of his favorite shows so that she could debate them with him. She took meticulous notes on his schedule, friends, and activities. She knew about his college coursework, his work schedule at the bakery, and even notes from talks he had with others. She had effectively been following him for years, waiting for the proper moment to make her move. When the cops questioned Monica, she finally broke down and admitted everything. She revealed that she had been preparing this since she saw Richard at Helen's birthday party. Her strategy was to obtain his inherited money through marriage, then persuade him to invest it in a new business that she would actually manage. She reasoned that even if they split, she would own half the company. Helen had to confront the truth when the bank approached her about her late house payments. Monica had been pocketing the mortgage proceeds rather than paying the bank. Helen investigated her accounts and discovered that Monica had been stealing from her for years, taking little amounts that Helen had overlooked. She took nearly $30,000 from her mother. Update 3. Monica accepted a plea agreement to avoid jail time. She is on probation for 3 years and has to repay everyone she stole from. She moved back in with Helen, who had to sell her home to pay off her second mortgage. They relocated to a small apartment in another city, primarily because Helen was unable to face her family after what had transpired. Richard transferred to a business school in another state. He still intends to take over the bakery someday, but he needed a break from all the family drama. He told me he felt stupid for not seeing through Monica's deception, but I kept assuring him she duped everyone, not just him. She'd been practicing this maneuver for years. Most of our family have apologized for questioning me, but I'm keeping my distance from everyone except those who have always backed us. Helen occasionally sends messages about missing our friendship, but I can't get over how swiftly she turned on me. My sister says I should forgive Helen because she also lost everything, but I don't think that excuses the way she treated us. I made many adjustments in the bakery. All of our accounts have been moved to a new bank, and I've installed stronger security cameras. I now have a lawyer who handles all of our business paperwork. Richard and I rarely attend family gatherings anymore. When we go, we keep our conversations short and avoid discussing Monica or what occurred. Some relatives believe I am being too hard on the family by remaining away. But this experience taught me who I can truly trust. Monica didn't simply attempt to take money, she attempted to damage my relationship with my son and turn my entire family against me. Some things you simply cannot forgive, even if it means losing connections that have lasted decades. The bakery is performing better than ever. Richard calls me every Sunday for our movie night. Now we're watching the same movie while video chatting. It is different than previously, but we are making it work. Sometimes losing family members is the cost of protecting yourself and those who genuinely matter.